Chapter 2175. Chen Zhao and Baifla arrived beside a lake. The two stood by the lake. Right now, a huge battle was happening above the lake. Around a dozen teams were engaged in a chaotic battle. The strength of these dozen or so teams was quite impressive. Chen Zhao and Baifla stood by the lake and watched the battle. An elemental ice mage created a huge block of ice. At the same time, this piece of ice also became everyone's battlefield. The battle was very intense, but everyone held back. Most people didn't use their full strength. They didn't want to kill either. Everyone had some restraint. Thus, to Chen Zhao and Baifla, this battle was rather boring. "What are they fighting for?" Chen Zhao asked. "Why do you think they're definitely fighting for something?" Baifla asked. "Apart from fighting for something, they're fighting because they have nothing better to do. They're not fighting for something. It's because they have grudges outside and they want to weaken their opponents," Baifla said. Baifla said, "That blue-robed Taoist nun is from Mount Longhu. Everyone here who is wearing Taoist robes is from Mount Longhu. They can be said to be seated contestants, and their strength is quite good." Chen Zhao looked in the direction Baifla was pointing. There was indeed an eye-catching nun. 6 people were ganging up on her, but they couldn't do anything to her. "Looks like they're not all ganging up on them," Chen Zhao said. "Of course, every organization has its own allies, not to mention a sect like Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect that has a positive image. Many of the teams that are willing to help them and fight with them have learned from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect or are willing to do them a favor. Of course, there are also teams that are helping Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect purely because of personal grudges." Chen Zhao rubbed his chin, wondering if he should join in. "You'd better keep your thoughts to yourself. For such a large-scale battle, the organizers will definitely keep a close eye on you. Especially when the two of us came, we didn't hide our whereabouts. The organizers' spies should have already noticed us. If you interfere with this battle royale at this time, it's likely that you'll be blacklisted. It doesn't matter even if I'm on the blacklist," Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. "Can they kill me? Maybe they won't directly target you, but you have a team. If the organizers can't target you, can't they target your team?" Chen Zhao thought about it and realized that it made sense. "Forget it. If you don't want to play, then so be it. Senior Sister Zhu Bai, there are 2 people by the lake. They have been observing for a long time. I don't know if they are friends or foes." Zhu Bai glanced at Chen Zhao and Baifla by the lake. In fact, she had already seen the 2 of them. However, she didn't have the time to think about whether they were friend or foe. Although her senior and junior brothers helped to relieve the pressure on her. But the situation was not optimistic. After all, there were only 5 teams on her side, including the team from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect. Their opponents, on the other hand, had 9 teams, which was almost twice their number. The Celestial Master Sect of Longhu Mountain was indeed very strong. However, blocking 3 teams at the same time was already their limit. Any more and they would definitely lose. The other teams on the same side could only fight one-on-one at most. Therefore, the situation was very disadvantageous to them. The opponent's goal was very clear. It was to stall the Celestial Master Sect's team first. Then, they would defeat the other allied teams one by one. Finally, they would turn around and deal with the Celestial Master Sect. The situation was tense, but Zhu Bai's mind was as clear as water. Right now, the entire situation was in her head. With the Celestial Master Sect's team's strength, it wasn't impossible for them to leave. However, the problem now was that if they left now, then they would be abandoning their allies. If the outcome of this holy glory battle was related to honor, then abandoning their allies was equivalent to abandoning their honor. Zhu Bai would rather lose her entire team than do something that would humiliate her sect. Even if she didn't get the title of Holy Glory, it didn't mean that the Celestial Master Sect was weak. However, if she did something that would humiliate her sect, then the entire sect would be humiliated. The opponent's goal was also very simple: to steal their spoils. If they could injure a few people from the Celestial Master Sect so that they couldn't participate in the next competition, that would be for the best. However, the two people outside the battle zone were indeed potential threats. Their goal was likely to be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the Oreo behind. Another possibility was that they were unaffiliated spiritualists. As for the idle spiritualists who accepted the invitation to the Battle of Holy Glory, every single one of them was powerful. Thus, Zhu Bai couldn't let her guard down. However, Zhu Bai's energy alone was limited. Just as she was thinking about her strategy, her attack and defense weakened. At this moment, Zhu Bai's heart suddenly became alert. Danger! Zhu Bai jumped away subconsciously. Then, the ice floe she was standing on suddenly exploded. A figure shot toward Zhu Bai from under the ice floe. Zhu Bai immediately took out her horsetail whisk. 1,000 threads swept toward the figure. The figure had already lost the initiative after missing the first attack. Now, it wanted to attack Zhu Bai directly. However, there was still a difference in strength between them. He was instantly swept up by Zhu Bai's horsetail whisk. Zhu Bai's heart jumped. She suddenly threw the person into the air. The person smashed toward Chen Zhao and Bai Fla on the shore. She's attacking us, right? We can fight back, right? Chen Zhao asked immediately. No. Even though you and I both know that she's attacking us on purpose, we made a mistake first. Even if we asked the organizers to judge, we're not in the right. What do you mean we made a mistake first? I didn't do that. No, when they were fighting, we entered the danger zone. The organizer has a rule that if the spectators enter a battle circle rashly, even if they are attacked, they are not allowed to fight back. Even if they want to watch the battle, they have to keep a distance. So, in the end, we were the ones who made the mistake first. So troublesome. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. He looked at the spiritualist who had fallen before him. The spiritualist had fallen more than 10 meters away, but he wasn't seriously injured. At least he still had some combat ability. His first reaction when he saw Chen Zhao and Bai Fla was to attack. In this chaotic battle, anyone who wasn't a friend was an enemy. Chen Zhao kicked the spiritualist back into the battle. This was the first time Chen Zhao had stayed out of a battle in the spiritual world with this identity. Chen Zhao's hands itched, but it wasn't convenient for him to attack. After all, he was now a senior in the spiritual world. Chapter 2176. As the battle continued, it started to go out of control. More and more teams joined the battle. Many teams had grudges against each other. Even if they were on the same side, there were still grudges. Or maybe both sides had grudges. This led to internal problems on both sides. There were already a dozen teams fighting. An hour later there were more than 30 teams. The two sides had turned into a multi-sided battle. More than 300 spiritualists were attacking each other. All sorts of dazzling spells and spells flew everywhere. Chen Zhao was dazed, as if he transmigrated to a magical world. However, this battle was also extremely enjoyable to watch. Chen Zhao had been in the spiritual world for 2 years. He'd even become the president of a supernatural organization. But this was the first time he'd seen a real magical battle. Just then, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. They covered the entire lake and the surrounding area. At first, no one noticed the dark clouds in the sky. But soon, someone realized the problem. They were in an alternate dimension. There were no weather changes in the alternate dimension. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. It landed in the center of the battlefield, on the huge ice floe. There had been 20 to 30 spiritualists fighting on the ice floe. This was because when this bolt of lightning landed, it blasted the 30-odd spiritualists into the air. The ice floe, which was at least 300 square meters, shattered instantly. Just then, a figure appeared in the sky. The figure looked like a celestial, as if a fairy had descended. Chen Zhao looked over. Wasn't that Zhang Tianyi? But Chen Zhao had never seen Zhang Tianyi dressed like this. Zhang Tianyi gave off an aura that made people want to worship him. He looked down at the living beings below him from above. Isn't this against the rules? Chen Zhao said, pointing at Zhang Tianyi. He has the right. He has the right to do so. He was originally one of the 3 chairmen elected by the Holy Glory organizers, and he is also responsible for enforcing the law during the Battle of Holy Glory. But he disrupted the battle. He didn't disrupt the battle. If the battle continues, a large number of thoughts may appear, and it may even affect the progress of the Holy Glory battle. That's why he appeared to stop the battle from worsening. That's favoritism. Didn't you notice? There's no one from Mount Lunghu's Celestial Master sect on the floating ice. If it were you, what would you do? Of course, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. I'll blast them into pieces. So, isn't it only natural for Celestial Master Zhang to do this? Many of the teams below dared not speak out even though they were angry. After all, he was Zhang Tianyi. All right, everyone disperse. Zhang Tianyi waved his hand and said. A few groups of people were still unwilling to give up. They thought that they had the upper hand just now. There was a high chance that they could cause trouble for Zhu Bai's team. But Zhang Tianhing's interference made their advantage disappear in an instant. In fact, once Zhu Bai's team recovered and turned around to deal with them, they would be in danger. Therefore, when they left, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Zhu Bai heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she could feel that her Grandmaster's appearance was too ingenious. The situation just now was already very dangerous. If their Grandmaster didn't show up, then they would most likely lose a lot of people. The other teams left one after another. Zhu Bai looked up at Zhang Tianyi in the sky. Just then, Zhang Tianyi descended from the sky. Zhu Bai and the other teammates all waved their sleeves and lowered their heads, waiting to greet Zhang Tianyi. However, Zhang Tianyi didn't land in front of them. Instead, he landed by the lake. Zhu Bai looked over and realized that it was the 2 people from before. Zhu Bai remembered very clearly that those 2 people had arrived an hour ago. They had been standing by the lake and watching the chaotic battle. At first, Zhu Bai thought that they were trying to take advantage of the situation. However, they didn't do anything. Even if someone attacked them, they would only dodge. Zhu Bai thought that they had already left. She didn't expect them to still be there. Hi, old Zhang. Chen Zhao greeted Zhang Tianyi, grinning. Zhang Tianyi glanced at Chen Zhao and Baifla. You guys didn't behave at all when you came in. We're all following the rules, Chen Zhao said confidently. If not, would you still be here? Zhang Tianyi sneered. Baifla looked at Zhang Tianyi. You purposely lured Crow to us, right? Chen Zhao was stunned. Was that true? Didn't they just meet Crow by chance? What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm being kept in the dark? You think it's a coincidence? Isn't it? The woman who was being chased by the Anubis construct was deliberately led to us. At that time, the crow's pet was following the woman, and you coincidentally killed the crow's pet. Naturally, the crow came to us. You need evidence, Zhang Tianyi said, dissatisfied. We're spiritualists, Baifla said calmly. As long as it's a suspicion, it's the truth. We don't need evidence. That's true. Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, this is hard for me. Using us to get rid of the hated team of the organizers is just using us. I hate it when people scheme against me. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. Just say what you need, Zhang Tianyi said with a dark expression. Don't beat around the bush. I don't need much, Chen Zhao said with a smile. I just want the entire process of the Battle of Holy Glory. I can't give you the entire process, Chen Zhao said with a reasonable smile. After all, we're still researching the process. We don't have definite results yet, so I can't give it to you even if I want to. I can give you the process of the next project. If you accept it, then we're even. If not, then forget it. Chen Zhao and Baifla exchanged glances. Baifla nodded slightly, indicating that he accepted the condition. How about something more practical, like cash compensation? Chen Zhao suggested. Zhang Tianyi and Baifla couldn't help but roll their eyes. The second test is to find the Soul Essence Stone. After the first round, the desolate land market will be rearranged to hide at least 1,000 Soul Essence Stones. Only those who find at least one Soul Essence Stone can pass. So only 1,000 people are left for the second test? At most, Zhang Tianyi said. Maybe less than 1,000 can find the Soul Stone. Chapter 2177. How about you tell me a few places to hide them? Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Do you think that's possible? Since you've already made an exception once, I don't think you mind making an exception a second time. I do. The test you and the organizer chose isn't fair at all, Chen Zhao complained. Some spiritualists are good at searching, some are good at predicting, and some are good at detecting, but some are only good at fighting. How are they supposed to find them? There's nothing absolutely fair in this world. Also, do you think the second test is better for the spiritualists you mentioned? Isn't it? Other than 1,000 real soul essence stones, there are 10,000 fake soul essence stones. Whether they are real or fake, they are guarded by a lot of demon beasts and magical beasts. Among them, there are a lot of powerful demon beasts and magical beasts. What about the spiritualists who are good at searching, sensing, detecting, and prophecy? Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Zhang Tianyi had a somewhat victorious smile. Even if he won in a verbal battle, it was still a victory. You're so boring. Chen Zhao turned and left. Celestial Master Zhang, goodbye. Bai Fle also left with Chen Zhao. Just then, Zhu Bai and the other disciples walked over. Greetings, Grand Master. Okay, during the Battle of the Holy Glory, don't call me Grand Master. I'm the Elder of Discipline, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said, all right, it's not convenient for me to communicate with you now. Let's wait until the Battle of Holy Glory is over. Yes. Grand Master, by the way. Zhang Tianyi hesitated for a moment before reminding them. If you encounter those two people again, avoid them if you can. Don't get into a dispute with them. Don't have any disputes at all. Grand Master. Who are those two? 2 asterisks holes. Ignore them. As long as you don't provoke them first, they won't attack you. Yes, Grand Master. All right, I've said enough. It's time to go. With that, Zhang Tianyi's figure gradually disappeared before Zhu Bai and the others. Zhu Bai and the others had no idea how Zhang Tianyi disappeared. A few seconds later, Zhang Tianyi appeared on the rooftop of a building. The 23rd generation Blood Mary also appeared on the rooftop of the building. Old Zhang, you're talking too much with your disciples and grand disciples. It's against the rules. What I'm talking about is unrelated to this event. The 23rd Blood Mary didn't plan to pursue the matter any further. She had known Zhang Tianyi for almost 100 years, so she knew his character very well. I found traces of the Hermit Order, the 23rd Blood Mary said. Hidden Cultivators Sect? Zhang Tianyi's expression changed. Yes, that troublesome organization. Why did these mad dogs come out? Zhang Tianyi asked. The reason why they were called mad dogs was because the Hermit Order never did anything proper, only doing bad things. They were present in the 2 world-class wars of the last century. And in those 2 world wars, mortals fought against mortals. On the other hand, the spiritual realm was fighting against the Hidden Cultivators sect. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Hidden Cultivators sect can go against the entire spiritual world. In reality, the Hermit Order wouldn't directly oppose other organizations most of the time. They were troublemakers, all kinds of troublemakers, all kinds of moths. For example, he could create a few calamity-grade monsters. For example, he could release a few legendary demon lords. Or perhaps he could release a few large-scale catastrophic magic spells. In any case, during that era, if a supernatural disaster were to occur in any part of the world, the first thing that the spirit controllers thought of would be the Hermit Order. Moreover, this kind of conjecture was most likely correct. Speaking of which, the Hermit Order's ambition wasn't that bad. After all, everyone has their own dreams. It was just that they were a bit out of touch with the times. 100 years ago, having such a dream would have been considered noble. 100 years later, if they still had such a dream, that would be considered low. World domination. Indeed, the Hermit Order's ambition was to rule the world. Furthermore, they had been working tirelessly towards that goal. Furthermore, they did very well in the first phase. The first phase of their plan was to cause destruction. However, other than the first phase, they didn't seem to know how to proceed with the second phase of their plan. Or rather, they didn't even have a second phase of their plan. Especially after the severe beatings. Even in the spiritual world, there were severe beatings. The current prosperity and stability of the spiritual world was created through repeated beatings. Fighting against evil, upholding justice and fairness, even in the spiritual world, that was what they advocated. Of course, there were also some outdated rules and bad habits. Furthermore, the concept of fairness in the spiritual world was different from that of the mortal world. In the spiritual world, the hierarchy was even more obvious. Because most of the time, the higher the hierarchy, the more powerful they were. For example, Zhang Tianyi. He was in existence at the top of the pyramid. At the same time, the reason why he was able to stand at the top of the pyramid was because of his strength. What did they do this time? Their target was Wendy. The 23rd Blood Mary replied. The 23rd generation Blood Mary said. Wendy was ambushed. Of course, it was just a probing attack. Wendy was unscathed and used the attackers as fertilizer. Wendy was one of the 3 chairmen of Holy Glory. The Anubis constructs here were created by him. There were over 100,000 Anubis constructs in the wasteland market. And these 100,000 Anubis constructs were created by Wendy himself, without the help of anyone else. How much mana was needed to create such a large number of Anubis constructs? Not to mention, such a large project wasn't something that could be completed by human effort. And yet, Wendy managed to accomplish such an impossible task all by himself. Don't tell me the Hermit Order's goal is to obtain the Anubis constructs technology from Wendy? That's possible. The 23rd Blood Mary nodded. How about we seal Wendy away? That way, the Hermit Order won't be able to find him no matter how much trouble they cause. Zhang Tianyi smiled and said, Sure, if you want to do it yourself. I don't want to experience the world's #1 alchemist. Alright, I was just joking. Wendy was the world's #1 alchemist. No one in this world could seal him away. Wendy was the weakest of the 3 chairmen. But he was also the most terrifying one. There was no one at the same level as him who could defeat him. Even Zhang Tianyi didn't want to get into a conflict with Wendy. During this Holy Glory battle, Wendy was responsible for creating all of the tools used in the assessment and trial. However, while those rabid dogs are crazy, their probing attack this time was a bit crude. The people they sent weren't able to probe Wendy's strength, but instead raised our guard. Do you really think they would be so reckless? Chapter 2178. At this moment, in one of the ruins, a few spiritualists had proud and complacent looks on their faces. His words were filled with a strong sense of pride and disdain. One of them was dressed rather exaggeratedly with a mustache and colorful clothes, like a clown. However, it was worth noting that one of his eyes was green and the other was purple. I'm leading them by the nose now. They think our target is the technology in Wen's hands, but they don't know that our real target isn't Wen at all. Another big guy sitting cross-legged on the ground said in a rude voice. Marfa, I just want to know when I can do something big. When can I make a ruckus and kill without restraint? Hulus, don't rush, Marfa said. You'll be able to do whatever you want soon. There was also a super fat guy hiding in a corner. He kept eating. While these people were discussing, they suddenly heard a commotion coming from not far away. A woman in green appeared on the wall. A team is outside. Huh? Did they notice us? No. Can you let me kill them? Hulus asked. Marfa thought for a while and said, Sure, but the battlefield is limited to this ruin. If we go beyond this ruin, we'll be discovered by the monitors. They can't escape this ruin. Hulus grinned, revealing his fangs. West and the others searched aimlessly. None of them knew how to track the Anubis structures. Thus, they could only wander aimlessly. Luckily, there were many Anubis structures in the entire wasteland market. Along the way, they had hunted quite a lot. Of course, they also encountered other teams. But most teams didn't fight with them. Everyone kept a certain distance. Not every team was so arrogant and rude. Most teams still maintained a sense of caution and respect for each other. Of course, not every team was willing to coexist peacefully either. Some teams would still stir up some trouble. They would first test the strength of the supernatural organization's team. If the supernatural organization's team wasn't strong enough, they would definitely start a fight. If the supernatural organization's team was strong, they would choose to retreat. To put it bluntly, it was bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Fortunately, the supernatural organization was not weak. Apart from the first team they encountered, the two sides had engaged in a fierce battle, and they even snatched the other party's demon pearl. At other times, it was just a small friction. The supernatural organization thought it was a good idea to fight for other teams' loot. Let's not talk about the risks first. At least in terms of efficiency, it wasn't as fast as killing monsters. That was why they were more willing to hunt the constructs of Anubis, rather than going up against other teams. At this moment, Morid suddenly stopped. There are others here. Everyone stopped in their tracks as well. At this time, a few figures walked out from behind a wall. Alarm bells were ringing in everyone's hearts. These people were extremely dangerous. Even if they didn't make any moves, they didn't feel any pressure. However, the people from the association could feel that the people in front of them were extremely dangerous. Hulus, I'll leave them to you, Marfa said indifferently. I will catch up to you soon. A cruel smile appeared on Hulu's face. Just like that, the few of them left Hulus behind, while the others turned around and left. Everyone in the association narrowed their eyes. They had encountered quite a few arrogant teams, but none had been as arrogant as the people in front of them. One person against 10 of them? This was no longer arrogance. This was arrogance. Morid didn't wait for them to leave. He attacked first. Lava vines. In an instant, countless vines drilled out of the ground and madly attacked the people in front of them. Hulu suddenly swung his arms and slashed out in a cross. Hulu's slash created a meat grinder space within a 30-meter radius. Everything within this space was sliced apart. All the lava vines were instantly sliced into pieces. Marfa and the others turned to look at the people from the association, surprised. They look quite strong. Hulus, are you sure you can handle them alone? Strong? Why didn't I notice? Hulus rubbed his 10 fingers together. His fingers had sharp claws like those of a carnivore, and his exposed skin was covered in thick fur. However, he was still in his human form. There weren't many changes. All right, let's go. Suddenly, Dong Tianchi attacked. His attack was as swift as the wind. The white-faced phantom demon slashed at Hulus. Hulus's claws reached for the blade. Dong Tianchi's expression changed. There was nothing the white-faced phantom demon couldn't cut. But it couldn't cut through Hulus's claws. At the same time, he realized that he couldn't pull the sword out. Gaia also attacked. The great sword on her back ignited in flames the moment she pulled it out. The flaming great sword slashed at Hulus. Hulus had been holding the sword with both claws. Seeing Gaia's attack coming, he immediately used one hand to grab the flaming great sword. Gaia also realized that her strength and the flaming great sword couldn't cut through Hulus's palm. In fact, in terms of strength, she was much weaker than Hulus. Just then, Lisa launched an attack. She aimed at Hulus's body from a distance. Boom! Hulus was sent flying dozens of meters away. But Hulus still managed to stand up, seemingly unharmed. This was unexpected, but also within the association's expectations. As confident as they were, they had to admit that this man was very powerful. This man was very powerful. If they were even slightly careless, it was very likely that they would suffer a crushing defeat here. Hulus grinned, revealing a mouth full of fangs. You guys are very powerful. To show my respect, I've decided to kill you in my second form. Everyone's expression changed. Did he not use his full strength just now? Hulus's limbs and torso began to thicken. His clothes were torn, revealing his greenish-black fur. His face had changed slightly. He now looked like a beast, but he still looked more like a human. His body grew from nearly 2 meters to at least 3.5 meters. Are you ready to die? Boom! A terrifying fireball blasted Hulu's body. If you want to fight, then fight. Cut the crap, Jalanash said. Chapter 2179. Okay. Hulu suddenly jumped up and charged at Jalanash. But at that moment, Hulu felt the air freeze. Then he froze. West pointed his finger at his temple and released all his magic. One had to admit that Hulu's was unbelievably strong. In the past, he had been able to control the field, and even if he had to face dozens of people, he could still easily stop them. But Hulu's made his magic power pour out like a tidal wave. The moment Hulu's was immobilized, Dongye Tianchi launched a sneak attack. One-word script! Dongye Tianchi roared. A huge sword energy slashed at Hulu's. But it couldn't tear through Hulu's defense in the end. Dongye Tianchi's defense was astonishing. One should know that Dongye Tianchi's blade could even split a building in half. But it couldn't cut through Hulu's skin. Hulu's grinned. He could feel that although West had locked him in place, he had to consume a large amount of mana. He didn't need to waste too much energy to drag it out until West was exhausted. West decided to stop the slow field before he ran out of magic. Just then, Norma attacked. Norma's soul came out of his body and turned into a nightmare horse. The nightmare walked in the air. Each step left a green flame flower in the air. When the nightmare shapeshifter arrived in front of Hulu's, its 2 hooves stomped on Hulu's chest. But it didn't do any damage to Hulu's. Of course, this was also because it wasn't a physical attack. Hulu's body shook slightly. Then, he swung his arm and shattered the nightmare. The nightmare turned into green flames and reformed. Norma, is it useless? His soul and body are too closely connected. I can't blast his soul out of his body. There was still a big gap between their abilities. This made Norma's attack seem very weak. It was just like how Norma couldn't blast Chen Zhao's soul out of his body. Because Chen Zhao's power and the strength of his soul weren't something Norma could shake. Although Hulu's wasn't as strong as Chen Zhao, he still had an unshakable soul. Of course, Norma's attack wasn't completely useless. At the very least, Norma's soul attack was a deterrent to Hulu's. Hulu's glanced at Norma's nightmare form. He knew that no matter how he attacked it, it would be useless. But soon, his gaze landed on Norma's flesh. Then, he charged towards Norma's body. Gaia instantly transformed into a fire dragon and spat out a dragon's breath at Hulu's. Hulu's eyelids twitched. He didn't expect Gaia to be a mixed-blood dragon. He did not want to be hit by this dragon breath. Therefore, he immediately dodged. However, just as he was about to dodge, a figure blocked his path even faster than him. An elite took action. Previously, he had not made a move. He grasped this opportunity. The dragon-bone dagger in his hand stabbed towards Hulu's throat. Hulu's tensed up. He could feel the threat of an elite and the bone dagger in his hand. At some point, Hulu's tensed his muscles. The dragon-bone dagger in Angelite's hand only pierced into the skin, but there was no sensation to speak of. It was obvious that his meticulous attack did not cause any substantial damage to Hulu's. Taking advantage of Angelite's pause, Hulu's punched towards an elite. Although he was not as fast as an elite, he was still very fast. An elite was so scared that he immediately stepped back, and the fist brushed past him. Bang! There was a sonic boom in the air. An elite had already retreated 20 meters. If he had been hit by that punch just now, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. An elite was the fastest man in the association. However, his defense was very weak. At this moment, Gaia's dragon tail swept towards Hulu's. Hulu's grabbed the dragon's tail and swept it horizontally. The fire dragon that Gaia had transformed into was smashed into a mess. Gaia turned around and unleashed dragon breath. Hulu's once again dodged at high speed. Just as Gaia was about to get up, Hulu's had already descended from the sky and smashed heavily into Gaia's head. Gaia spat out blood. Huluz picked up the dragon tooth that Gaia had spat out. What an enjoyable battle! I did not expect to be able to hunt a dragon. Although it is only a young dragon, let me be a dragon slayer today. Boom! Due to Huluz's carelessness, Lisa's sneak attack was successful. Lisa knew when was the best time to attack. Although Huluz did not receive much damage, Lisa's 2 sneak attacks had infuriated him. Stupid little bug. Huluz directly charged towards Lisa this time. However, at the next moment, a dark cloud shrouded Huluz. Huluz's body stopped in midair and quickly retreated. Death Mage! Huluz frowned. This was the first time he showed such an expression. At the same time, he felt that his body was showing signs of being corroded. He did not notice it at all during the intense battle with the others. The aura of death had unknowingly invaded his body. Although the amount of aura of death was not large, it was not enough to pose a fatal threat to him. The effect it could have on him was minimal. However, if he continued to be delayed by the others, if he continued to inhale more aura of death, he might really fail miserably. Huluz knew his strengths and his weaknesses. Death mages were also the type that he disliked fighting the most. That was because the opponent's attack method was too strange. Most of the time, he did not even notice it, and he would already be hit. Although Helios looked calm on the surface. But she did not think that she alone would be Huluz's opponent. Even so, many of her companions were unable to pose a threat to Huluz. She was afraid that she would not be able to do anything alone. However, what surprised her was that Huluz actually chose to retreat. Very good, your strength is not bad. I will let you go this time. However, the next time I meet you, you will see how terrifying my third form is. Everyone's eyelids twitched. This kind of monstrous strength, is this still not his strongest strength? He still has a third form? Everyone's heart was shrouded in a layer of haze. In the battle just now, no one dared to say that they used their full strength. However, they were at least 80%. Even so, they were still at a disadvantage when facing Huluz alone. If Huluz did not go easy on them and directly used his third form, how many of them would still be alive now? This dragon tooth belongs to me. As for the dragon head, I will temporarily keep it. Next time, I will complete this dragon's slaying feat. 9 Heaven's Godly Emperor. Chapter 2180. Crushing Defeat. Everyone in the association was dispirited. This was the first crushing defeat they'd suffered since Chen Zhao became the president. They couldn't even find an excuse. If that person hadn't retreated. If that person had used the third form from the start. If he had the third form. In that case, it was very likely that they would be completely annihilated. West clapped his hands and said loudly, "Okay, kids, how long are you going to slack off? Can a single loss really defeat all of you?" West had to pull himself together now. He was the leader, so he had to lead. Even though he was also feeling depressed. But he couldn't show it. He had to pretend to be strong. Actually, why didn't that person use the third form? Everyone knew. That person might not be familiar with the third form. He might lose control or become obsessed. There was another possibility. The third form wouldn't last long. It wouldn't be of critical use. Unless they had no other choice, it was better not to use it. Maybe I should inform the president now. Seeing that everyone was still depressed, West could only say something harsh. Gaia wiped the blood from her mouth and stood up. Don't inform anyone. I haven't been defeated yet. Flames burned in her eyes. Next time, I'll use my own power to take revenge. At the same time, Qin Zhao, who didn't know anything, was still wandering around. The barren bazaar was very big. Qin Zhao and Biflo wouldn't be able to finish it in 3 days and 3 nights. There were also battlefields everywhere. Battles between teams. Battles between teams and Anubis constructs. It was an eye-opener for Qin Zhao. That's right, it was an eye-opener. Qin Zhao realized that he'd been too narrow in the past. Although Qin Zhao had interacted with many high-level and powerful beings, He had never met anyone who was as powerful as him. But he didn't know much about truly brilliant magic and spells. Only now did Qin Zhao realize that the brilliance and richness of magic were enough to make anyone gasp in amazement. Right now, Qin Zhao and Biflo were standing on the rooftop of a skyscraper. A fierce battle was taking place in the square directly below the skyscraper. Two guilds and a terrifying construct of Anubis. Qin Zhao had already figured out the classification of Anubis constructs. Below was an Anubis construct that had undergone 9 fusion processes. The first team had fused with the Anubis construct. As they were about to destroy it, the second team appeared. The objective of the second team was very clear. They wanted to snatch the Anubis construct's demon orb. However, the result was beyond the two teams' expectations. The strength of this Anubis construct, which had been fused 9 times, was beyond their imagination. In the beginning, the two teams had been fighting against each other, completely disregarding the construct of Anubis. When Anubis construct entered the battlefield, it killed 3 people on the spot and heavily injured 2 others. Only then did the two teams realize that they had made a mistake. As a result, the two teams had no choice but to join forces to fight against the Anubis construct in order to preserve their lives. Qin Zhao watched the battle in the square excitedly. Biflo suddenly shifted his gaze and gazed into the distance. What happened? There's also an interesting battle over there, Biflo said as he pointed to the left. Oh? How so? There are 2 very powerful teams fighting intensely, Biflo said. I can recognize one of them. It should be a team from the church. The leader is Chief Consul Matthew, who's also John's favorite student. The other team is unfamiliar. I can't tell where they're from, but they're also very powerful. Huh! The battle seems to have ended, Biflo muttered to himself. Biflo, how did you know about the battle that's happening so far away? Don't tell me it's because of the battle aura or waves. My senses are definitely stronger than yours. If I can't feel it, how did you? That's why I said you're still too young. The years I've experienced have made me wiser and more knowledgeable. You'll never be able to catch up to me in this regard. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. Are you trying to take advantage of your seniority? I'll go over and take a look, Biflo said. Didn't you say the battle was over? What's there to see? When I first sensed it, the battle was still very intense, but it ended in an instant. This is very strange. Maybe something happened outside of my perception. Matthew is His Holiness John's student. If something happened to him, and he didn't help, he would be blamed by His Holiness John. Fine, go. Saving people isn't my forte, so I won't cause trouble. Qin Zhao clearly wasn't interested in saving people, especially when they were strangers. Qin Zhao really didn't know John well. Even if they met again, they would at most nod and greet each other. Biflo quickly flew into the air and disappeared into the gray air. Qin Zhao lifted his head and looked at the sky. The battle below was still intense. It could even be described as exciting. However, Qin Zhao's attention had shifted. How did Biflo know what was happening in the distance? Normally, the range of a small world should be the limit of one's senses, right? Biflo wasn't even in the Shangqing state. He didn't have a small world, but all the signs showed that. His perception range was even wider than Qin Zhao's pocket world. This was what Qin Zhao couldn't understand. It could even be said to be unacceptable. How exactly did Biflo do it? A spiritualist's senses were usually divided into 2 types. One was when the other party transmitted information, such as aura or pressure. The further the distance, the harder it was to transmit. It was like sound. To transmit further, one had to be louder. Aura and pressure were the same as sound. They would spread with distance, and then disappear completely. The other method was to use his own power to spread out and receive information within a certain range, just like what Qin Zhao was doing. It was like a radar. Qin Zhao felt that his and Biflo's senses weren't that much different. His senses might even be sharper. Biflo could sense what was happening further away. It was very likely that he was using some kind of information receiving spell. But for now, Qin Zhao couldn't figure out what Bifla's special spell was. Chapter 2181. On the battlefield, the three teams were taking a break. The people from the Grey Society panted heavily, using the time to recover their mana. The Alps Alliance didn't have it easy either. They'd used up a lot of stamina and mana in the battle. They'd also lost 2 people and 2 were heavily injured. This caused their team to almost collapse. The Anubis construct before them was simply too powerful. Previously, they had successfully fused and killed 2 Anubis constructs that had fused 8 times. The entire process had been quite easy. They'd thought that they could deal with an Anubis construct with their power. But the result was out of their expectations. The Anubis construct they'd fused was far beyond their expectations. Coupled with the Grey Society's sneak attack, their team was thrown into chaos. In the end, the Anubis construct, who'd been the prey, succeeded. It killed 2 of them and heavily injured 2 others. Of course, the Grey Society didn't have it easy either. 1 was dead and 1 was injured. The leader of the Alps Alliance, Felto, looked around with a frown. "Odai, do you feel anything strange?" Felto asked in a low voice. "Captain, do you also feel a very uncomfortable feeling?" Odai asked. "You felt it too?" "Yes," Odai said. "I felt it not long after we clashed with the Grey Society. Do you know where the person spying on us is hiding?" "At the top of the building. Don't look up and don't attract his attention. Just pretend you don't know," Odai reminded in a low voice. "Is it someone from the Grey Society hiding in the dark?" "No, the Grey Society doesn't know who it is. Plus, there were 10 of them when they appeared. How could there be another hidden person? That's why I think it's most likely to be a third team or a random participant." "Then should we do something?" "Not yet. We don't know their goal or background." After a brief moment of regrouping, the Anubis construct cast a covetous gaze at the 2 guilds once more. Qin Zhao sat on the edge of the rooftop. The building was about 100 meters tall. Therefore, without good eyesight, one would not be able to see Qin Zhao in this gray space. He could hear everyone's conversation below, including Odai and Felto's. Of course, Odai was able to discover him. It was mainly because Qin Zhao didn't hide it on purpose. Another reason was that Qin Zhao wasn't good at hiding. Unless Qin Zhao hid in a corner. However, Qin Zhao had his own status, so he definitely wouldn't do something like that. Suddenly, Qin Zhao's attention shifted away from the battle below. Not far away, Qin Zhao saw a figure jumping between the roofs of a relatively short building. A lone wolf? Qin Zhao looked at the figure. The person also noticed Qin Zhao's gaze. He couldn't help but stop and look up at Qin Zhao. Huluz grinded his sharp teeth and leaped dozens of meters before landing on the plaza. At this moment, everyone in the square was stunned. What was going on? Who was this person? It was furry and looked like a beast druid. Or was it some sort of beast hybrid? Of course, it was also possible that he had borrowed the divine power of some god of the wilderness. Huluz was not a person who was good with words and communication. What he was better at was fighting. However, he wasn't the one who took the initiative this time. It was the construct of Anubis. The Anubis construct clearly didn't like Huluz's sudden visit. The Anubis construct opened its mouth and spat out a stream of black flames at Huluz. Huluz raised his right arm and swiped down with his claws. Hiss! In an instant, the black flames were directly smashed apart by Huluz's claws, turning into 5 tiny black torrents. Huluz's claws sliced through the air and the Anubis construct's head was split open. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Instant kill? The orc used his claw to kill the Anubis construct? Huluz strolled to the corpse of the Anubis construct and picked up the colorful demonic bead. Hee, the second spoil of the day. Huluz started rubbing his fingers again. He glanced at the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance around him. He couldn't resist the urge to tear them apart. However, his rationality told him that killing here would likely be exposed. By then, he would either be expelled or hunted down. This wasn't what he wanted. However, the beast in his heart kept urging him to go crazy. He really wanted to kill. He really wanted to crush all these ants. Huluz suddenly revealed a cruel smile. "Hand over your spoils of war, all of them," Huluz said in an arrogant tone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were all on guard. "Hand them over!" Huluz suddenly raised his voice. At the same time, a terrifying pressure exploded from his body. One of the witches was frightened by Huluz and directly shot a spell at him. A cruel smile appeared on Huluz's face. He suddenly pounced at the witch. "Ah!" The scream only lasted for a short period of time. The witch had already been torn beyond recognition by Huluz. Chen Zhao, who was sitting at the edge of the balcony, raised an eyebrow. He didn't think that the beast would kill people. Only a visitor like him had the right to retaliate. Only when a visitor was attacked maliciously in the Wasteland Bazaar could he retaliate and kill people. The participants of the Battle of Holy Glory weren't allowed to kill each other. This meant that the beast was also one of the visitors. However, the beast's act of killing the witch just now was actually against the rules if one were to look into it. Because the witch's attack was actually a passive counterattack. The beast was trying to scare her. However, Huluz emitted a thick, murderous intent. Qin Zhao could tell that this was a mad dog dominated by bestiality. Qin Zhao suddenly left the edge of the balcony and fell from the sky. Boom! Everyone turned to look at Qin Zhao. Otter and Fialto both raised an eyebrow. This guy and the beast were together? Were they planning to kill both of their teams now? Qin Zhao walked out of the hole he just made. However, when Qin Zhao saw a tooth hanging from Huluz's neck, his face twitched. "Your tooth seems to be a dragon's tooth. It's even bloody. Can you tell me where it came from?" The dragon clan had a pair of upper canine teeth in their lower jaw. This pair of canine teeth was equivalent to the dragon clan's fingerprint. Every dragon clan's upper canine teeth were different. Chapter 2182. There weren't many dragon teeth that Qin Zhao could remember. One was Abito's, a child of his family. The other was Gaia's dragon tooth. Be it Abito's or Gaia, they were both young dragons. Even though Gaia was already an adult in human terms. But in dragon form, she was still a child. Huluz pulled off the chain with the dragon tooth hanging on it. "You mean this? My spoils of war just now were obtained by killing a dragon." Huluz's face was filled with arrogance. Of course, he said this to increase his deterrence. Hunting and slaying dragons was a very shocking thing to anyone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were clearly frightened by Huluz. Slaying a dragon. That was a legend. "Then, Dragon Slayer, show me what you've got." Qin Zhao hooked his finger. "What? You can't wait to challenge me?" Huluz looked at Qin Zhao in disdain. Defeating a dragon slayer should be a glorious thing. There was a hint of coldness in Qin Zhao's smile. "Be careful. Otherwise, you'll really die." "Captain, is it just my imagination? That Asian seems like he wants to kill someone." "It's not your imagination," Felto whispered. "He really wants to kill someone. That Asian doesn't know what a dragon is, right? That savage is a dragon slayer. That guy seems to be using the power of the god of the Baron." "What's the god of the Baron?" "There are many faiths in this world. For example, Druids believe in the god of the Baron born from nature. The god of the Baron is a god even older than the god of the Baron. Basically, it's the god of the Baron from the old generation. Since they're all gods of the wilderness, why are they called the gods of the wilderness? Because the barbarian gods are gods abandoned by the rules and nature, and the barbarian gods originate from nature. Their power also comes from nature. Being abandoned by nature also means that they will wither like a flower that has lost the sun. However, these old gods are not willing to disappear just like that, so they also found a way to continue, and that is to spread their faith to the demons. As a result, they changed from the gods of nature to the gods of demons. The demons' faith is full of the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst, which also led to the barbarian gods giving back the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst. This kind of power is nothing to the demons, but for humans it is too cruel. At this moment, Huluz turned his head to look at Odai and Felto. You seem to understand my power very well. Huluz's tone seemed calm, but there was a trace of killing intent in it. He didn't like people talking about the source of his power. Of course, the main reason was that he didn't like people discovering his weakness from the source of his power. Looks like I have to get rid of you in advance. The murderous aura around Huluz grew stronger. Huluz, who wanted to attack the two teams, suddenly exploded instinctively. I told you that you should focus on me, Chen Zhao said casually. Otherwise, you'll probably die. Roar! Huluz had always been the first to attack. Without any warning, Huluz swung his claws at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his right hand and gently pinched Huluz's claws. Crack! Ah! Huluz cried out in pain. His 5 fingers had been crushed by Chen Zhao. He couldn't pull them back. Huluz decisively used his right claw to tear off his left arm. Chen Zhao looked at the thick arm in his hand. He casually tossed the arm to the side. You didn't show your dragon-slaying abilities. Huluz, the people from the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Huluz was undoubtedly very powerful. However, the Asian on the other side gained the advantage in an instant. Huluz took a few steps back and looked at his broken arm. You don't think you can win like this, right? The flesh on Huluz's broken arm wriggled. Soon, a new arm stretched out. Chen Zhao nodded. Not bad. Looks like I can take a few more hits. Do you want to see more power? Huluz smiled arrogantly, the mane on his body growing crazily. His body arched forward slightly and a pair of demon horns grew out of his forehead. The aura on his body gave everyone a feeling of evil. Very evil. Huluz looked like a real demon. Of course, from Chen Zhao's point of view, although Huluz gave off a thick demonic aura, he didn't look like a demon. But he wasn't a demon. Chen Zhao knew demons too well. He also knew their power. Not everyone was suitable to use demon power. Demon power wasn't actually good or evil. It was just that demon power was extremely stimulating. It was like how some people could accept the taste of chili, while others couldn't. Demon power was like chili. But most people in the world were allergic to chili. Only a few people could accept demon power. But their bodies would still change to different degrees. Just like Huluz before him. Actually, Chen Zhao and Huluz were similar. They were both beneficiaries of demon power. Of course, he could also be called a victim. Chen Zhao himself had many demon bloodlines. His body had also been modified by demon bloodlines. But there was still a qualitative difference between Chen Zhao and Huluz. Chen Zhao could control the demon's power. Huluz stomped, and a spiderweb appeared on the concrete floor. Huluz's sharp claws attacked Chen Zhao again. Bang! Huluz didn't even see Chen Zhao's attack clearly. He felt the bones in his chest shatter completely. His body flew out like a kite with a broken string. The 3 or 4 buildings behind him were smashed into ruins. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this really a battle between humans? Why did it feel like 2 human-shaped monsters were fighting each other? Huluz stood up again. He grabbed a piece of reinforced concrete that weighed hundreds of kilograms and threw it at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao blocked the piece of concrete with only one hand. But just then, Huluz's real attack came. The moment Chen Zhao's vision was blocked by the reinforced concrete, Huluz's claws swiped at Chen Zhao from behind. But then, the reinforced concrete in front of Chen Zhao shot back and smashed into Huluz. A few rebars stabbed into Huluz's body, pinning him to a wall. Chapter 2183. Huluz roared and pulled out the steel bars from his body. Huluz didn't become weak because of his injuries. Instead, the pain and blood made him even more ferocious. Roar! Huluz roared. He took a step forward and pounced at Chen Zhao with even greater speed and power. This time, Chen Zhao didn't move. He allowed Huluz's claws to land on him. Huluz's claws slashed across Chen Zhao's skin, creating countless sparks. You need to use more strength. Chen Zhao looked at Huluz emotionlessly. Huluz roared again and swung another claw at Chen Zhao's head. However, even after shattering the bones in his arm, he still couldn't hurt Chen Zhao at all. Huluz was shocked. What was wrong with this guy? By now, Chen Zhao had already raised his right palm and pushed Huluz's chest lightly. Huluz flew out uncontrollably. Huluz stood up again and attacked again. He was sent flying again. 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 This went on for more than 10 times. Chen Dao's feet finally moved. He strolled toward Huluz. Huluz had monster-level recovery abilities. But this didn't mean that he was immortal. After being heavily injured several times, his energy was starting to weaken. You're much weaker than I imagined. Chen Zhao looked at Huluz calmly. You can't kill me. Huluz looked at Chen Zhao, panting. You can't kill people here. If you kill me, you'll be in even more trouble. I can't kill participants of the Battle of Holy Glory, but you're not a participant. Looking at Huluz, Chen Zhao said. Plus, you broke the rules. You provoked the participants and even approached them, so it's reasonable for me to kill you. Chen Zhao reached out and pressed down on Huluz. Originally, Chen Zhao wanted to kill him. But in the next instant, Huluz disappeared. But his aura was still there. Chen Zhao turned around and saw someone carrying Huluz. The person had a mustache and was dressed in colorful clothes. There were 7 other people beside him. Marfa tossed Huluz onto the ground. I was wondering why you didn't come back for so long. Marfa glanced at Huluz on the ground. Fortunately, we came back to take a look. Otherwise, you would have died here today. This guy is very powerful. No, very powerful. Hirus stood up again with the help of his companion's quick healing. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at Marfa and the others. Including Huluz, there were 9 people in total. Are you with him? Sir, how should I address you? Marfa looked at him gently. At the same time, he muttered to himself. To be able to beat Huluz up like this, his strength is definitely not ordinary. But no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't figure out Chen Zhao's background. China? Dongming? Spiritualists from these 2 places were the most likely suspects. The possibility of it being Huaxia was higher. However, he had more or less recorded the outstanding younger generation of the prestigious families in Huaxia on his list. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find anyone that matched the person in front of him. I'll tell you if I win, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Marfa, let me teach him a lesson. What an arrogant little fellow. Marfa was also amused by his words. Sir, do you know what you're saying? Of course. Chen Zhao nodded with a smile. You're all going to die here today. Are you kidding? That must be it. Ha! You're so funny. Marfa chuckled. No, I'm serious. Look at my expression. Am I serious? Maybe you don't know who I and my subordinates are, so it's not your fault. But your ignorance will bring you disaster. Suddenly, a murderous glint appeared in Marfa's eyes. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt his body being pulled by an invisible force. However, the force wasn't very strong. At least, it wasn't strong enough to shake Chen Zhao. Surprise flashed in Marfa's eyes. His displacement spell didn't work on the person before him? Has it started? Chen Zhao looked around. He couldn't tell who had done it. He didn't even know what the spell was used for. It shouldn't be weak. However, most of the power was weakened by his non-elemental body. Then, the effect on him was minimal. Looks like your magic resistance is very high, Marfa said calmly. Although Chen Zhao had dispelled his best move, Marfa didn't think much of it. The displacement spell wasn't all he had. It wasn't his trump card either. He had too many spells to counter his enemies. Maybe I should be more serious. Marfa lifted his right arm. He wore a string of colorful gems on his right wrist. The string of jewels began to shine brilliantly. Gravity, 1,000 times! Marfa yelled. Terrifying magic power was released from his body. Whoosh! Everyone could feel the terrifying magic power from Marfa. It attacked everyone's soul like a tsunami. The members of the Grey Society and Alps Alliance paled in fear. The mustached man was scarier than the beast-like spiritualist. They could all see how terrifying it was. Just the amount of mana that he released was 10 times more than the combined mana of the two teams. They couldn't imagine how terrifying it would be if he went all out. In an instant, the ground around Chen Zhao shattered. However, Chen Zhao was still standing there, unharmed. Marfa's expression became even more astonished. Gravity spells couldn't be nullified or counteracted by magic resistance. Gravity spells were actually physical attacks, so no matter how high one's magic resistance was, they couldn't be nullified. However, the Asian before them didn't seem to be affected at all. Perhaps it wasn't completely unaffected. He might not be able to move now. Huaimi, use your strongest power to destroy him, Marfa said. Chen Zhao saw a beautiful woman walk in front of him. Electricity flashed on the woman called Huaimi. Goodbye. A strong electric current crackled in the air. Everyone could smell something burning. It was caused by the interaction between electricity and air. The terrifying high-voltage electricity turned into a flood and engulfed Chen Zhao. The torrent did not stop flowing and continued to move forward. It seemed like it was going to destroy everything. That was indeed the case. The terrifying electric current destroyed all obstacles along the way, leaving not even a speck of dust. Huaimi clapped her hands. She was always confident in her attacks. Nothing could be preserved in this torrent of lightning. Everything would be evaporated in the flood. Except for her target. Not a bad attack. Chen Zhao stood there unscathed, apart from his slightly burned clothes. Chapter 2184. It's too early for you to say goodbye. Huaimi's pupils constricted. She saw Chen Zhao raise his right arm. Then, she saw a familiar scene. The only difference was that in the past, she'd stood in his position and used her lightning torrent to destroy others. And this time, she was the one being attacked. Watch out! Suddenly, an old man appeared before Huaimi. After the dazzling light, the old man's magic shield shattered. Thankfully, the torrent disappeared too. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Union were numb from fear. The battle between the two sides had scared them silly. They'd once thought that they were the top spiritualists in the spiritual world. But now, they realized how foolish and ignorant they were in the past. Top? Compared to the people before them, they were as young as babies. Were they going to fight against monsters of this level in the Battle of the Holy Light? Was this a joke? Any one of these people could wipe out their entire team. Chen Zhao rubbed his palms. Please don't try to defeat me in my area of expertise. You'd better give me some new tricks. Once I lose interest, I won't be able to resist killing you. Suddenly, Chen Zhao turned around and grabbed a person's head. The person was about to sneak attack Chen Zhao. No one knew how he'd appeared behind Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao knew and seized the opportunity. For example, this type. It's really boring. Crack. Chen Zhao crushed the person's head. Marfa and his men's expressions changed. One of their friends was killed just like that. Chen Zhao shook the flesh off his hand. Marfa's expression grew colder. He couldn't be as calm and at ease as before. Go all out. Don't hold back, Marfa ordered. Everyone moved in an instant. Including Huluz, who'd just been cured. Huluz turned into a ferocious beast and pounced at Chen Zhao. Gravity! 10,000 times! Huluz's weight suddenly increased by 10,000 times, but he couldn't bear the force himself. Huluz pressed down on Chen Zhao with an overwhelming force. Chen Zhao reached out and blocked Huluz's attack. But this time, he didn't push Huluz away. Huluz couldn't move his body either. Although Marfa's gravity spell wasn't targeted at him. But it was actually taking effect on him. That was why Huluz felt like he had been filled with cement. Flame prison! The old man who'd blocked Chen Zhao's lightning counterattack cast a spell at him. Chen Zhao was immediately engulfed in flames. However, the next moment, the flames were sucked into Qin Zhao's mouth. After brewing it in his mouth, he sprayed it at the old man with an even more intense and scorching impact. Bang! After the violent explosion, there was nothing left of the old man. I've said it before? Give me something fresh, or it'll be the day you die. At this moment, Marfa finally realized. The man in front of him was not ignorant. He just didn't want to know about them. If he and his subordinates still held the same arrogant and contemptuous attitude as before, it was very likely that he would be killed by this man. At this moment, a witch on Marfa's left pressed her palms against the ground. Alec, Chui Xin, show yourselves! At this moment, two huge magic arrays appeared in front of the witch. Two colossal dragons emerged from the two magic arrays. One was a black dragon, and the other was a purple dragon. But when Qin Zhao saw the purple dragon, he was stunned. He felt that he'd seen this purple dragon somewhere before. But the moment the purple dragon saw Qin Zhao, the scales on its neck stood up. Cancel my summon! Hurry up and cancel my summon! Damn idiot, idiot! Chui Xin roared crazily. Crazy. She was really going crazy. Was the world so small? How did she end up in front of this human after so many twists and turns? The other black dragon called Alec didn't think much of it. Chui Xin, you're my summoned beast now. You better listen to my orders. Hurry up and kill this guy. Kill him? You idiots. This guy killed a dozen dragons, including 2 father dragons. If you want to be enemies with him, don't drag me to death. Chui Xin was about to break down. Everyone was shocked by Chui Xin's words. Killed a dozen dragons? Everyone looked at Qin Zhao differently. I remember now. You're the dragon that escaped. Qin Zhao grinned. I'm so lucky. I didn't think we'd meet again. This time, we can finally settle our scores. Human, I don't want to be enemies with you and I have no intention of doing so. Plus, I'm a guardian of the Celestial Master sect now. You can't kill me. Are you kidding? You're a guardian of the Celestial Master sect? I'm not lying. I'm a guardian of the Celestial Master sect. Fine, for old thing's sake, Qin Zhao said calmly. Piss off. He still had to give Zhang Tianyi face. At least, he didn't plan on falling out with Zhang Tianyi. But the other black dragon wasn't so lucky. At least, his background wasn't big enough. I've killed a black dragon. You're the second one. Alec also grew nervous. He'd laughed at Chui Xin's cowardice. But after hearing Chui Xin's words, he found it ridiculous. Now that Qin Zhao was staring at him, he felt his hair stand on end. Human, do you think I'm scared of you? You should be. Qin Zhao moved. In an instant, he appeared above Alec's head. Alec couldn't even find Qin Zhao. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his head and lost consciousness. Qin Zhao smashed Alec's head heavily. The huge black dragon's head smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. Everyone was silent. What had just happened? Did that guy kill a black dragon in an instant? At that moment, Marfa's group, the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance were all shocked. Retreat! Scatter and run! Marfa made a prompt decision. Even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to fight against such a guy. It was better to run as soon as possible. Right now, Marfa didn't think that they had a chance of winning. Running was the wisest choice. Leaving one's back to the enemy on the battlefield was the stupidest choice. Facing an undefeatable enemy, fighting to the end was the stupidest choice. Chui Xin wasn't in a good state. She knew how terrifying Qin Zhao was. Chapter 2185. But when Marfa wanted to escape, it was too late. A black screen rose within a radius of several thousand meters. The dark lava completely covered the area. Everyone felt like their heads were going to explode. No one can escape. Smiling, Qin Zhao looked at Marfa and the others. They didn't have any intention to fight at all. The difference in power between them and Qin Zhao was too obvious. There was no suspense in the battle. Even though they knew that they would all die if they didn't fight. But knowing it was one thing, and doing it was another thing. Everyone looked at Qin Zhao solemnly. Indecision was written all over their faces. Fight? Or not fight? At this moment, the people outside the dark lava also saw the black screen. What's happening there? I don't know, but I know it's dangerous. So it's better if we don't go over. It's the president! Jalanash exclaimed. The others saw the black screen too. He's here too? Gaia asked, confused. I wonder who the president's opponent is. I'm afraid it's that person. Maybe that group of people. West's expression was complicated. He felt like he'd gotten his revenge. But on the other hand, he also felt that it was a pity. That person was undoubtedly very powerful. He'd brought great humiliation to them. But on the other hand, he'd also given them great motivation. There were pros and cons to this encounter. But now, if that person met Qin Zhao, he probably wouldn't be able to wait for the day they could take revenge. Huluz was indeed very powerful. However, Huluz was far from reaching the level of a monster in their hearts. In their minds, there was only one person who was a monster. That was their president, Qin Zhao. They knew Qin Zhao too well. Similarly, they didn't know where Qin Zhao's limit was. It was just like the huge black screen in the distance. How much magic power did he need to maintain such a terrifying screen? Almost everyone in Desolate Town could see the black screen. But not many dared to approach it. After all, it was too scary. When Marfa and the others went all out, only then did they truly realize how big the gap between them and Qin Zhao was. They could have fought back and forth a few times. But when they became serious, Qin Zhao also became serious. Every time they attacked, they would be met with a counterattack that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Looks like you don't have any new tricks. Qin Zhao's tone was filled with disappointment. Marfa and the others had never been humiliated like this. In the past, they were all looked up to by others. But now, they were like children being pressed against the ground by a strong man. Cui Xin suddenly felt lucky. Although she was also an enemy this time. But he didn't have to face Qin Zhao. He was really too lucky. Even if she was summoned by his enemy. However, this summoning was not mandatory. After all, the other party did not have the strength to force her to obey his orders. In fact, this kind of summoning was even a request and acceptance. It was an equal contract. Therefore, no one owed anyone anything. So now she could be a bystander. Of course, what was even more fortunate was that she had a powerful backer, the Celestial Master Sect of Mount Longhu. Without the protection of Longhu Mountain's Celestial Master Sect, Qin Zhao probably wouldn't care which side she was on. It was likely that they would directly settle the old and new grudges between them. Then you can all die. Instantly, Marfa and the others felt Qin Zhao's murderous intent. Everyone couldn't help but use their strongest defensive spells. Even the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance used their defensive spells at the same time. The murderous intent was released indiscriminately. Hiss, the first. The first to die was the spiritualist who had summoned Cui Xin. She was killed by Qin Zhao. Even though she used a defensive spell, it was still useless. The second. It was the spiritualist who had the power of lightning. In the same instant, they couldn't resist at all. Qin Zhao made them feel like they were suffocating. This was a disaster, a nightmare. The third, the fourth, the sixth, only Marfa and Huluz were left. The entire process took less than 5 seconds. All the negative emotions surged into their hearts. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. It was as if they were worried that Qin Zhao would notice them. Why? Why do you want to kill us? We don't even know you! Huluz roared. His voice was hoarse as if he was begging. You don't know me? Unfortunately, the dragon tooth on your neck belongs to my friends, and you killed them. Qin Zhao smiled at Huluz. That's right, Huluz said. They're not dead. I didn't kill them, Huluz said hurriedly. None of them died. I see. Qin Zhao suddenly retracted his murderous intent. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. Huluz and Marfa were so nervous that they broke out in cold sweat. Suddenly, Chen Zhao lifted his head. I still want to kill you! As he spoke, Huluz felt an overwhelming pressure assaulting him. Ah! Huluz could only cry out in pain. Chen Zhao's fist smashed into his body with unstoppable force. Huluz's body felt like it was being bombarded by a large-caliber cannon. He turned into minced meat and flew out. Marfa's pupils constricted. It's here! Chen Zhao was already closing in on him. Marfa felt that his thoughts had completely frozen. He couldn't react at all. It was a pressure that surpassed his body and mind. Suddenly, a beam of light broke through the cover formed by the dark lava and shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked up and took 2 steps back. The beam of light landed on the ground before him. Then a figure stood before Chen Zhao and Marfa. Zhang Tianyi? Surprised, Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, you better give me an explanation. When the others saw Zhang Tianyi, their expressions changed. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance almost knelt on the ground. Marfa was panting like a bull. He almost thought that he was going to die. But who would have thought that the person who was the least likely to save him in the world would actually save him? Don't tell me he's your man too. No, Zhang Tianyi said. Actually, I don't know him at all, but he's still useful. Old Zhang, you're making things difficult for me. Chen Zhao's expression was troubled. Just because he's still useful, you took my enemy away from me? Isn't that too casual? I'll arrange a project for you later, Zhang Tianyi said. It's useless for me to know the project in advance. I still like my subordinates to fight fairly with the experts instead of playing tricks. Chen Zhao's expression was stern and righteous. Chapter 2186. Zhang Tianyi put his hands behind his back and smiled. He really can't die. Name your condition. As long as it's reasonable, I'll try my best to satisfy you. Haha, when you said those words, you were already very insincere. Chen Zhao scratched his nose and pointed at Cui Xin. I've already let her go. Are you going to steal another prey from me? I don't want to, but he's really important. I need to get some information from him, Zhang Tianyi said helplessly. How about this, you choose between her and him? No matter how stupid the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were, they could tell. Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi were clearly on the same level. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken in such a tone. It was said that there were some old monsters in Huaxia that had the ability to rejuvenate. Perhaps the young man in front of him was an old monster in disguise. Cui Xin was devastated. She had thought that she had escaped death. He didn't expect it to be used as a bargaining chip to threaten Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi might be able to stop him. But he couldn't protect 2 people in front of Chen Zhao. Protect Trish, or protect Marfa. Zhang Tianyi sighed. Marfa was indeed very important. But it wasn't important enough for him to abandon his own people. It was just as Chen Zhao had threatened. He could not protect both Trish and Marfa at the same time. Of course, he understood Chen Zhao. When Chen Zhao said that he would choose him, it meant that he could back off. When a person really wanted to kill the other party, no one could stop him. Zhang Tianyi didn't think he could stop Chen Zhao. If Zhang Tianyi wanted to kill someone close to Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to stop him either. They almost didn't need to do anything, they just had to let go of their hands and feet and fight. The aftermath of the battle could kill the people around them. Come to Dragon Tiger Mountain when you're free. I have a lot of good stuff there. Zhang Tianyi smiled at him. In his heart, he said, Brat, that's enough. I've already taken such a step back. You brat, know when to stop. However, Zhang Tianyi's answer was still not enough to satisfy him. This kind of empty promise is meaningless. Chen Zhao didn't believe Zhang Tianyi's promise. Or rather, they didn't believe in Zhang Tianyi's credibility. Does this old man have credibility? What's more, he was now threatening him for benefits. If he really went to Mount Lenghu to get his reward, he wouldn't be able to do so. It might be sending a lamb into the tiger's mouth. Don't talk about morality. Zhang Tianyi was a shrewd old man. His morality was self-interest first, followed by moral bottom line. Just say it, what do you want? Qin Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. That depends on how sincere you are. Marfa was furious that he was being used as a bargaining chip. However, there was more helplessness and fear. In this negotiation, he did not even have the right to choose. He didn't even have the right to speak. Zhang Tianyi rummaged in his pocket. He took out a scroll and tossed it to Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao took a look. Grand Emperor of Heaven's True Scripture of Taoist Techniques. Just the name alone was quite intimidating. However, he didn't even know if it would be useful to him. What's this? Qin Zhao tried to open it but couldn't. If he forcefully tore it open, he would only damage the scroll. What the hell? This is a Tao law that only the sect master of our Longhu Mountain Celestial Master sect can come into contact with. Be careful with your words, Zhang Tianyi said with a black face. How do I open it? Figure it out yourself. Don't tell me you can't even handle such a small matter? Zhang Tianyi said, looking at Qin Zhao with a playful gaze. He loved to see Qin Zhao embarrassed. In the end, he had no choice but to beg Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao tossed the scroll in the air. Do I have to figure it out myself? I just need to send out a message and whoever opens it for me can make a copy. There's no limit to the number of times. I don't believe that no one can open it with so many spiritualists in the world. Zhang Tianyi kept glaring at Qin Zhao. He didn't expect Qin Zhao to be so shameless. He already regretted giving him such an important heavenly scripture of Taoist techniques. At first, Zhang Tianyi thought that even if Qin Zhao took the Taoist technique of Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Sect, he would at most comprehend the profound realms within and not learn the spells inside. He didn't expect Qin Zhao to trick him directly. I'll remove the seal on it later. Zhang Tianyi was so angry that his nose was crooked, but he could only pinch his nose and accept it. The item was in Qin Zhao's hands and he was the one who gave it away. It was almost impossible for him to take it back. Fine, I'll leave him to you. Qin Zhao let Marfa go easily, but before he left, he added, Oh, after you ask what you need to ask, you can give him back to me. How about that? Zhang Tianyi's face darkened. Qin Zhao was tricking him. Hearing that, Marfa found it even harder to speak. He was going to die either way. How could Marfa be willing to speak? Piss off. Qin Zhao turned around and left, grinning. But he stopped before the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance. You didn't see anything today. Nothing happened. Do you understand? If I hear anything about what happened today, I'll throw your friends, families, and organizations into the Pacific Ocean to feed the dogs. The people from the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance paled in fear. Are there dogs in the Pacific Ocean? Zhang Tianyi asked. Fur seals. Can't I? Qin Zhao touched the black cover. Not long after, Baifla appeared beside Qin Zhao. I thought you'd fight with Celestial Master Zhang. Baifla's tone was rather disappointed. He didn't hide his thoughts at all. He knew Qin Zhao's abilities. Qin Zhao had a realm that he couldn't reach in 400 years. It was also Zhang Tianyi's realm. He really wanted to learn something from Qin Zhao and Zhang Tianyi's battle. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao and Zhang Tianyi didn't have a reason to fight. Of course, it might also be because they were wary of each other. How about we fight? Qin Zhao glanced at Baifla. I'm not stupid. There's at least a realm difference between us. You're already undefeatable in this battle. But your strange and miraculous magic is something I can't hope to achieve. Those spells can stall for time, but they can't win. Baifla had a clear understanding of himself. He might be proud and arrogant, but he wasn't arrogant. He wouldn't blindly think that he was undefeatable. When did you come? Probably when you went downstairs, Baifla said. Do you know who those people are? Yes, Baifla answered. Who are they? Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2187. They're generally bad people, Bifla said calmly. They've done all the bad things you can think of. Most of the time, no matter what kind of evil it was, it could be summarized as a bad person. Qin Zhao and Bifla continued to stroll around the desolate market. They would stay and watch the battles. The first trial lasted for 24 hours before it finally ended. During this time, Qin Zhao saw the association's team. But Qin Zhao didn't show himself. After confirming that they were fine, Qin Zhao left the vicinity of the association's team. When Qin Zhao and Bifla left the desolate market, the first stage had officially ended. It felt great to be back in the modern world. That was how Qin Zhao felt. Bifla didn't show it. But he had the same feeling. Maybe it was a different space like the real world. But that gray and gloomy environment, that kind of emptiness and silence brought great pressure to people. Qin Zhao didn't like that feeling. No normal person would. The familiar sunlight, air, and passers-by. This was what normal people liked. Let's go get a drink, Qin Zhao said. Oh, doesn't the fire worship sect abstain from alcohol? No. Qin Zhao and Bifla found a roadside pub. There are many such roadside pubs in Turkey. Many Turks like to sit in these roadside pubs and drink beer in the afternoon. Qin Zhao and Bifla both enjoyed the afternoon. Just then, a familiar figure entered Qin Zhao's field of vision. Li Xian. Of course, Qin Zhao only knew her online username, Little Shinshin. Li Xian was broadcasting on the streets of Istanbul. Li Xian talked nonstop. Suddenly, her phone on the selfie stick beeped with a message. While broadcasting, Li Xian looked at the messages from the corner of her eye. These messages were all private messages sent to her by her fans. At the same time, she also saw the comments in the live stream. The live stream was filled with, "Look at the asterisk shoal. Look at the asterisk shoal." What was this? Li Xian was confused. She didn't know what was going on. Qin Zhao also didn't know that he'd become popular in Li Xian's live stream. Basically, the viewers who watched Li Xian's live stream for a long time all knew who Qin Zhao was. Some people even suspected that Li Xian had hired someone. Li Xian suddenly saw Qin Zhao sitting at a table by the roadside. Li Xian was in a bad mood. Qin Zhao even waved enthusiastically at Li Xian to greet her. Qin Zhao smiled brightly. It was as if he had met a friend that he had not seen for a long time. However, Li Xian didn't look so happy. She and Qin Zhao were on the same flight to Istanbul. But she felt that her fate with Qin Zhao had basically come to an end. Especially at the airport, when she saw Qin Zhao and his men drag a group of people into the corridor and beat them up. She kept her distance from Qin Zhao, indicating that she couldn't afford to offend him. Qin Zhao was definitely not a good person. At least, he wasn't the kind that she knew. She even imagined that Qin Zhao was some big boss of a gang. Thus, she really didn't want to meet him again. Next to Qin Zhao was a man wearing Central Asian clothing. Li Xian couldn't help but imagine what kind of illegal transaction was going on. I can feel that the woman knows you, and her brain is working at high speed, and her body is over-secreting dopamine. There are only two possibilities for this situation. One is that she is extremely excited, and the other is that she is in a state of extreme panic. Bifla looked at Qin Zhao. What did you do to her? I won $500,000 from her, Qin Zhao said. Really? Bifla stared at Qin Zhao suspiciously. What do you think I can do to her? She's just a normal person. The rules of the spiritual world might not apply to you, Bifla said honestly. You've never been one to follow the rules. There had always been a rule in the spiritual world not to harass normal people. But this rule only applied to regular spiritualists. It didn't apply to people like Qin Zhao and Bifla, whose status and power were already extraordinary. In ancient times, they could just find a slightly remote place. If they made up a doctrine, they could be worshipped as gods. Whether it was the rules of the spiritual world or the laws of the normal world, they were already very weak on them. For example, if a criminal stood before them, the laws of the normal world first talked about evidence. But they didn't need evidence. When they thought that the other was a criminal, they would punish the other in the way they thought was right. You sound like you know me very well. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. While Qin Zhao and Bifla were teasing each other, Li Xian had already walked over. Li Xian was helpless too. Because of the request from the bosses in the broadcast room, she came over to greet Qin Zhao. Hello, can I sit here? Li Xian asked in fluent English. Her tone was rather polite. Before Qin Zhao could reply, Bifla spoke first. Please sit. Mr. Qin, we meet again. You don't look very happy about our reunion, Qin Zhao said directly. Qin Zhao said directly. Kids in the live stream, are you still gritting your teeth at me? Do you really want to buy a plane ticket to Istanbul to beat me up? Unfortunately, I'll be staying in Istanbul for a long time, but you definitely won't have a chance to beat me. Plus, you definitely can't beat me. Under Qin Zhao's provocation, the comments in the broadcast room exploded. Seeing how you want to beat me to death but can't do anything to me really makes me happy. Actually, most of the viewers in the broadcast room knew that Qin Zhao was rich. Basically, no one had anything better to do than to find Qin Zhao to practice martial arts. But in the broadcast room, no one would be serious with them anyway. Li Xian saw that the situation wasn't good. If Qin Zhao continued to cause trouble, the broadcast room would really be banned. There were rules from the higher-ups. Streamers weren't allowed to verbally attack or provoke the audience. Even if the streamer didn't do it on purpose, Qin Zhao's behavior was still not allowed in the broadcast room. Qin Zhao's various arrogant actions did bring some popularity to the broadcast room. But the side effects were also very obvious. Sir, how should I address you? Li Xian asked. Gumby Bifla. Hello, Mr. Gumby. Just then, the broadcast room exploded again. Actually, the ones who exploded were the bosses in the broadcast room. Many of them knew Bifla, or rather the name. Gumby Bifla, a super rich man in Central Asia. Chapter 2188. A super tycoon who didn't rely on oil to become one of the wealthiest people in Central Asia. Gumby Bifla had only been known by the rich people in China since last year. Gumby Bifla's Sun Group had collaborated with the richest company in China, Wansha Group. They had invested more than $130 billion. They had collaborated on more than 50 projects. Of course, this news was quite sensational in the business world. But not many ordinary people knew about it. Therefore, Gumby Bifla wasn't famous among ordinary people. But among the wealthy, Gumby Bifla's reputation was rather high. No way. Is this guy really Gumby Bifla? It can't be, right? It can't be a random actor, right? He's wearing the local costume and calls himself Gumby Bifla. Is he really that super tycoon? Li Xian glanced at the comments in the live broadcast room. In fact, she didn't know how Gumby Bifla could make the bosses in the live broadcast room explode. Just then, a huge tip floated across the live broadcast room. The person who had tipped Li Xian was none other than the boss of the live broadcast platform. Of course, he had another identity, the son of the richest man in China. He's the real Gumby Bifla. I've seen him at my dad's party. This bullet screen was too eye-catching and eye-catching. Everyone in the live broadcast room saw it. Instantly, the live broadcast room exploded. All sorts of dirty comments floated across the room. If the two of them were actors, they were probably the most expensive actors in history. Most people with a clear mind understood. With Li Xian's status, it was impossible for her to hire Gumby Bifla. Qin Zhao glanced at the comments. Bifla, you seem to be quite famous. If you spend a few $1 billion, you can be famous too. I can't do that. I don't have that much money. Qin Zhao's current net worth was only a little over $10 billion. Of course, the beer brand still had a lot of room for growth and profit. Denver, the person in charge of the brewery, would tell Qin Zhao about people who wanted to buy the brewery and beer brand every month when he did the financial report. Perhaps Dash & Bear's valuation wasn't as high as a first-tier company. But its profitability might not even be as high as a first-tier company. For example, those famous internet companies. For comparison, the world's largest search engine only made $1 billion in a quarter. Furthermore, Dash and Bear's quarterly profits had crushed this network technology company. Chen Zhao's net worth might not even be in Forbes' top 10. But that didn't mean they were richer than him. In terms of cash flow, even the richest person in the world might not be able to compare to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's money was rotting in the bank. Everyone knew that 99% of the world's currencies were depreciating, including the US dollar. But Chen Zhao really didn't understand finance. If a dabbler like Chen Zhao was allowed to invest in finance, that would not be a loss, but a squandering. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to deposit the money in Citibank, and then sign a high-interest contract with them. In fact, almost every tycoon and bank had similar contracts. With $1 million, he could negotiate with the bank for a higher interest rate. Plus, he had a professional manager to help him invest. Of course, those investments were the most reliable fund investments. Their profitability was only slightly higher than the bank's interest. Li Xin looked at the bullet screen in the live broadcast room and roughly understood. The man in the traditional clothes of Central Asia was not a terrifying tycoon. Instead, he was a true super-rich man. "I heard this guy won $500,000 from you," Baifla asked, pointing at Chen Zhao. Li Xion's face darkened. He really touched her sore spot. This was a dark history that she didn't want to mention. To her, it was definitely not a small amount. Moreover, the RMB had been changed to dollars. "How about we play a game? If you can win, I'll give you $1 million, Baifla said, smiling. Game? What game? Instinctively, Li Xian wanted to reject. Her first reaction was that this super-rich man wouldn't make an outrageous request in front of millions of viewers, would he? Smiling, Baifla took out a credit card and placed it on the table. Then, he pushed it to Li Xian. "Mr. Gunbai, I don't understand. What does this mean? This credit card is anonymous and has no password. You can swipe it however you want. If you can swipe the card's overdraft limit, and it doesn't exceed $1,000, then you win. I'll give you $1 million. Li Xian didn't take the credit card. Instead, she looked up and asked, "I don't understand. What's the point of this competition? Also, I don't think I have any chance of winning." "Actually, it's not that you have no chance of winning. You have a huge fan base, so you can ask them for advice. This card isn't a rare type of card. You can determine the card's limit and upper limit based on the type of card. It might seem like I'm asking you to squander your money, but in fact, this competition still requires some skill," Baifla added. "I only have one rule, and that is, you can't check the upper limit of this card. As for the other methods that you and your fans can think of, you can try them. Mr. Gunbai, I still don't understand why you're doing this. You can think of it as the bad taste of rich people." Baifla glanced at Chen Zhao beside him. Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. "That's your bad taste. I'm not. In my eyes, you're not rich either." Baifla's words ignited Chen Zhao's anger. "You have more assets. Do you dare to compete with cash?" The live stream was filled with joy. On one hand, Chen Zhao had lost. On the other hand, they were jeering. "Ha ha! You dare to compete with the richest people in Central Asia? You've got guts." "In this era, cash is the most worthless thing," Baifla said. "Only substantial assets or stocks can truly represent your net worth." "So you admit defeat?" Chen Zhao asked mockingly. Baifla had never been a broad-minded person. "Do you really want to compete? Whoever's a coward is a coward. How much cash do you have?" "No matter how much you have, I can take out more cash than you." Chen Zhao was unprecedentedly confident in this aspect. "Do you know how many listed companies I control?" "I don't know how many you control, but I'm sure that the total amount of money in your company's accounts isn't as much as mine. I can raise at least $3 billion. Then you lose." The viewers in the live stream were unhappy. These two guys were better at bragging than the other. But they didn't fight for real. even though the numbers they mentioned were astronomical figures. But the key was that they were only moving their mouths. No one had seen that money before. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2189. Forget it, Bifla suddenly said. I'm not as vulgar as you. Chen Zhao gritted his teeth. This guy knew that his cash flow couldn't compare to Chen Zhao's. He directly rejected with such a high-sounding excuse. The audience in the broadcast room was so happy that they couldn't even find direction. But now, no one wanted to cause trouble for Chen Zhao. After all, he could joke with Bifla in such a tone. He should be a rich and powerful person on the same level as Bifla. They didn't know if Chen Zhao could really take out more cash than Bifla. But they were sure that most of the people in the broadcast room, or maybe everyone's wealth wasn't as much as these two. They felt helpless that the two were showing off their wealth. Mr. Gunby, let's forget about our bet, Li Xian said. Why? My broadcast room is a positive one. This bet will make people think that I'm showing off. Li Xian knew that the country's current policy was to purify the internet. It was against vulgarity and vulgarity. Li Xian didn't want to use her head to test the bottom line of the platform and policy. She usually did relatively positive live broadcasts. Fine, I won't make things difficult for you. Bifla readily accepted Li Xian's explanation. Li Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She wasn't as persistent as she looked. If Bifla really wanted to force her, she might give in. Plus, she already knew that Bifla was a super rich man. He was on the same level as the richest man in China. She couldn't afford to offend him. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Goodbye, Mr. Gunby. Goodbye. Li Xian didn't plan on building a relationship with Bifla. Li Xian's mind was always clear. If the other party was a superstar or a famous person, she might put down her pride to suck up to the other party or gain popularity. But the other party was a super rich man. They weren't from the same world. No matter how Li Xian sucked up to him, they wouldn't have any chance to continue talking. Bifla waved his hand. Goodbye. Li Xian ran for her life. Smart girl. How smart can a small internet celebrity be? Chen Zhao's tone clearly showed his disdain for Li Xian. I don't have anything in common with you. Bifla rolled his eyes. Li Xian hurriedly left. Little Xinxin, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Yeah, I think that super rich guy is quite approachable. They are all big shots. No matter how much I interact with them, I won't become a big shot. Instead, I might become their plaything. For example, just now, that Mr. Gunby was making fun of me. Although little Xinxin, I don't have much money, I don't want to be played by them. What a pity. I'd be happy to be a monkey for such a big shot. There were also a few keyboard warriors with unfriendly tones, saying that Li Xian was pretending to be virtuous. This was unavoidable. As the old saying goes, when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. Li Xian was used to ignoring these keyboard warriors. Let's continue our previous live stream. However, there was no longer that small interlude. The following live broadcast also became somewhat dull and boring. Li Xian also felt that the fans in the live stream were not in a good mood. After that, he ended the live broadcast in a hurry. Li Xian found a seaside restaurant. Istanbul has very long and high-quality beaches. Although it was January, the weather was slightly cold. But it still couldn't stop tourists from all over the world from coming here to enjoy the beach, sunshine, and beautiful women. Li Xian just found a seat and sat down. Suddenly, she saw a foreigner quietly reaching for an Asian's backpack. What are you doing? Li Xian immediately raised her voice and shouted. The Asian and the foreigner were both stunned for a moment. The Asian immediately grabbed his backpack and looked back at the foreigner standing behind him. What are you doing? TCH. The foreigner snorted and swaggered away. This foreigner was probably a local tyrant. So he was quite arrogant. To him, Li Xian was the foreigner. So he didn't care about being caught on the spot. Of course, no matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't dare to rob her openly. So the most he could do was leave while cursing. Hello, miss, thank you. The man came to Li Xian. You're welcome. We're all in a foreign country and need to help each other, Li Xian said politely. I wonder if I have the honor to know your name? My name is Li Xian, not Musili. It's Li as in dawn, Xian as in prosperity. I'm Zhou. Are you here to travel? Or are you on a business trip? Li Xian asked. Business trip, Zhou replied. The two met old friends in a foreign place, so they sat down and had a meal together. Li Xian also learned that Zhou was an employee of a big company. This time, he came to Istanbul with his leader on a business trip. The two chatted happily and even exchanged contact information. I didn't expect you to be a streamer. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought you were a big star. You flatter a girl the first time you meet her. I guess you've cheated a lot of girls with this trick. I swear to God, I just said it casually. I learned it from books. You're the first girl to let me practice it. In fact, Li Xian felt sweet in her heart. She wasn't the kind of love-struck fool who couldn't move when she saw a man. She also had a certain amount of love experience. But Zhou gave her a very good impression. Zhou was witty and humorous, and his looks were quite elegant. Even Li Xian was a little moved. Of course, it was nonsense to say that it was love at first sight, and she would immediately sacrifice her life for him. But Li Xian felt that Zhou was the type that she could go further with. She just didn't know what Zhou was thinking. Let's go to the coastal park over there. Zhou took the initiative to invite her. He also had a good impression of Li Xian. He was now secretly confirming whether Li Xian was interested in him or not. Now the two only needed to break through the paper window. There were a lot of people on the coast in the evening. The street lights on the coast were already lit. Unconsciously, Li Xian and Zhou's hands were already holding each other's hands. It was hard to count who held the other's hand first. However, at that moment, 3 uninvited guests blocked their way. One of them was the thief who wanted to steal from Zhou's backpack. The other 2 didn't seem to be the same kind of people as the thief. One of them was wearing a suit and leather shoes, and the other was dressed like a psychic. It's them? It's that man. I feel it. It's on him. At this time, the man in the suit came up and said in English, Hand over the demon pearl. Chapter 2190. Confused, Li Xian turned to look at Zhou. What demonic pearl? Zhou's expression was ugly. He did not answer Li Xian's question. Do you want to fight here? Hurry up! Cut the crap! The man in the suit growled impatiently. It seemed that the 3 of them were very impatient, as if they were in a hurry. You won't make it. Why? You'll be severely punished if you fight here, Zhou said. No matter what, you'll be eliminated. Instead of being eliminated awkwardly, it's better to be calm. At that moment, 2 SUVs stopped beside them. Everyone was stunned. Then, a few people jumped out of the car. Li Xian realized that she had met these people on the plane. They seemed to be Chen Zhao's subordinates. They have it on them, Jalinash said. When the 3 and Zhou saw the people in the SUVs, their expressions changed. Without wasting any time, Gaia got out of the car and blocked their way. The 3 wanted to resist, but Gaia beat them down with a few punches and kicks. Then Gaia searched their bodies. An elite blocked Zhou's way. Sir, please hand over your things. What do you want? I know your boss. Don't do anything stupid. Li Xian shouted immediately. She did not know what these people had been trying to steal. However, it was clearly immoral and against the law. But they ignored Li Xian's shout. Zhou stood behind Li Xian and formed a seal with both hands. But before he finished forming the hand seal, an elite had already made his move. An elite interrupted Zhou's hand seal and pressed him to the ground. He quickly found 2 demonic pearls. Got it. Let's go, an elite said. Zhou, are you okay? Seeing Zhou pressed to the ground, Li Xian immediately turned around and helped him up. The others left too. What did they steal from you? Zhou looked like he was about to cry, but facing Li Xian's question, he shook his head and pretended to be strong. Still, he pretended to be strong and shook his head. It's nothing. Forget it. It's just lost. No, I can't just let it go like this. I know who they are. I'll get them back for you. No, there's no need. Zhou grabbed Li Xian's wrist. That thing is not very important. Are you sure you don't need to call the police? Zhou smiled bitterly. He didn't know how to explain it to Li Xian. Actually, that thing isn't worth much. Then why did they snatch it? Li Xian's face was full of confusion. Suddenly, she seemed to have an epiphany. Could it be an important scientific research result? Or some other data? Let's put it this way. The other two groups of people and I are participating in a competition. This competition requires us to collect that thing, and there are requirements for both quantity and quality. After the competition is over, there are still a large number of items that we haven't collected. If this trend continues, then the competition can't continue. So, the organizers have given us a certain amount of time. Before 12 o'clock tonight, if we can snatch enough items from other contestants and teams, then we can pass this competition. If we can't reach the required quantity, then we will be considered to have failed and will be eliminated. What kind of competition is this? So strange? Is it an illegal competition? No, although this competition is relatively private, the government is also involved. Zhou said. That is to say, those two groups of people actually snatched it legally? You can say that. Then, won't it be a problem if your item is snatched? Zhou touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, It's fine. In fact, my leader and I are acting as bait. Our loot has actually been hidden. What kind of competition is this? It's a battle of wits and courage. Where can I watch the competition? Li Xian was interested. As long as it's not illegal. But why haven't I heard of this competition? Is it a secret competition? Not open to the public? Not completely open to the public. Only a small group of people can watch. What conditions do I have to meet? Do I meet the conditions? Zhou smiled bitterly and shook his head. No. All right. Li Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, Are those people really not part of a criminal organization? When I saw them at the airport, they had a conflict with a group of men in black. In the end, at a corner, they directly dragged the group of men in black. I saw it with my own eyes. Those men in black that you mentioned should also be contestants of this competition. They can be considered competitors. Is it allowed by the organizers to do dirty tricks outside the competition? I don't support it, but I don't oppose it either. You're not some special forces competition or super agent competition, are you? No, we don't serve the government. In fact, people who serve the government are not allowed to participate, nor can they get an invitation. Anyway, as long as it's not illegal, it's fine. Zhou was secretly happy. He could hear the subtext in the Xian's words. I swear, I've never done anything against the law. How many more? Gaia asked. Right now, we have a 9-fusion demon pearl, which can be counted as 512 beads. Since we came out of the wasteland market, it's been 6 hours since we got out. We've gotten 3 6-fusion beads and 1 7-fusion demon pearl. If we convert them into beads, that's 832. In other words, we still need 196 beads. After they came out of the first trial, they were informed by the organizers that they did not pass the trial. Because the condition to pass the first trial was to hand over a 10-fusion demon pearl or 1024 demon pearls that had not been fused before. And the rules of the organizers made it so that none of the participants or participating teams could pass the first trial. If this continued, almost all the participants and teams would be eliminated. And it was said that only one team could pass the first trial directly. If there was only one team left, there would be no need to carry out the later projects. They could directly announce the result of the Holy Glory battle. This situation had never happened before. So, to make up for it and to continue the event, the organizers could only slightly change the ending time. The participants and teams came out of the wasteland market at 12 noon. They still had 12 hours. No matter what method was used, whether it was robbing or stealing, in short, they had to gather 1,024 demon pearls or a 10-fusing demon pearl. That was why they were in this situation now. Now all the participants and teams had gone crazy. They were desperately robbing the demon pearls of other participants and teams. Chapter 2191. Ordinary people didn't notice the difference in this city. But the influence of the spiritual world was huge. Most participants and teams were here for the title of Holy Glory. If their actions harmed ordinary people or caused a huge impact in the world of ordinary people, they would be eliminated. They might even face even more severe punishments. Thus, no one dared to be stupid now. They were more restrained in front of ordinary people. But for their own kind, they weren't so patient. Plus, most spiritualists were proud. Plus, time was really tight this time. There were only 12 hours in total. Everyone and every team had to do their best. They tried their best to steal from other teams. Some teams would turn around and steal from other teams as soon as they were robbed. Chen Zhao and Biflo were lying on the beach now. It was already early evening, but the two didn't mind. Bifla, shouldn't you find someone else to team up with? Is it fun to follow me all day? Or can't you find someone else to team up with? You should feel honored. Can I say dirty words? I just feel that we have more common topics to talk about. Common topics? Do you have some misunderstanding about yourself? I hope that you can inspire me with your great power, and I have a rich reserve of magic knowledge that can also inspire you. This was why Bifla had been working with Qin Zhao. It wasn't because they shared the same interests, nor was it because they had similar statuses. It was just that Bifla hoped to learn something from Qin Zhao. As for Qin Zhao's feelings, that wasn't in his consideration. Why don't you go pester Zhang Tianyi? Why don't you pester Mary 23? What's the point of pestering me? My advantage isn't obvious before them, Bifla said. Bifla said, based on my observation of you, your magic knowledge is rather poor and monotonous. This is called simple but refined. You don't understand. When you understand this, maybe you'll reach my current level. It was rare for Qin Zhao to act cool. He opened his mouth and acted like he was unfathomable. Unfortunately, Bifla didn't buy it at all. You can't tell me what to do. Your level is high, but your level is low. Bifla mercilessly exposed Qin Zhao's true nature. He was so angry that he wanted to flip the table. If you had this level of comprehension, you wouldn't have been stuck at a bottleneck for so many years. You should just give up. Your talent is too poor. What I lack is luck. Take you for example. Your talent isn't that great, but you're able to grasp such great power. This means that sometimes talent isn't more important than luck. Whether it's talent or luck, I achieved it, but you didn't. This means that I'm better than you. Both of them were trying their best to ridicule and belittle each other. Say whatever you want. It was as if he could find joy in doing so. However, the two of them refused to fall out. Those who didn't know would think that the two of them were good friends. Moreover, this quarrel lasted from evening to early morning. The whole beach was deserted, and they were still arguing. Of course, no one came to chase them away. In fact, there were quite a few people around them. However, they were all Bifla's subordinates. They were all in charge of taking care of Bifla's affairs. At this moment, one of Bifla's subordinates jogged over to Bifla, knelt on one knee, and performed a special greeting. Leader, the results of the first trial are out. Yes. How are my students' results? The young masters have all successfully entered the second round. They're currently ranked third. Third? Who's first and second? Bifla asked. In first place is the Sacred Army led by Mr. Matthew, with a score of 1,820 points. In second place is an unknown team from Huaxia. The team's name has not been disclosed, and they are only 5 points behind the first place. How many points did we get? 1785 points. How many people entered the second round? Bifla asked. 25 teams and 18 lone wolves. Including the casualties of the teams that advanced, there are 248 people in total. Qin Zhao turned his head and asked, "Do you have a list?" "Yes, Mr. Qin." "Please wait a moment." Because Qin Zhao and Bifla were of the same generation, Bifla's subordinates were especially respectful to him. A while later, Bifla's subordinate handed Qin Zhao a list. Qin Zhao found West and the others on the list. They were at the bottom, but everyone was here. No one had been injured in the first round and had to leave. The supernatural organization was ranked 21st. They weren't at the bottom, but their results weren't outstanding. They scored 1,150 points. This was a rather dangerous result. They'd passed the first trial with 1,024 points. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't really care about their results. He'd brought them here with the attitude of learning. Qin Zhao wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that everyone from his family was invincible. After staying in the barren land for so long, Qin Zhao had seen many strong people. The strength of some teams was indeed very strong. Of course, his 10 people wouldn't be so far behind in terms of combat power. At least, Qin Zhao believed that they could be in the top 5. The first trial wasn't just about team combat power. Luck was also a big factor. There was also psychological factors. Bifla glanced at the list in Qin Zhao's hands and couldn't help but laugh. 21st. Looks like your team has to go home in the second round. Do you believe that I'll send your students home right now? Bifla pursed his lips and didn't provoke Qin Zhao anymore. He really couldn't guarantee that Qin Zhao wouldn't do such a despicable thing. The first round's result doesn't mean anything. If you really think that my team isn't that strong, do you dare to have a private round? Qin Zhao was just that arrogant. He'd already seen Bifla's students in the barren land. In terms of combat power, they weren't much stronger than his team. This was why Qin Zhao dared to challenge Bifla. Bifla didn't accept. Our teams don't need to compete. Let's save our energy for the second trial. Also, I think we should work together. At least, we won't suffer any losses in internal conflicts. Qin Zhao thought about it. That seemed to make sense. There was no point in them having fun here. Resting was the most important thing right now. As for the alliance that Bifla suggested, he'd see how it went. Chapter 2192. Oh, there's another piece of news that you should pay attention to. Bifla suddenly said seriously. What news? The people in charge of some teams, the invited guests this time, are up to no good. They've already done something sneakily today. In other words, people like you and me? Sort of, but they don't have my status or your power. What are they doing? Helping their teams get rid of competitors. That's not allowed, right? Of course not, but as long as they don't get caught, the organizers can't do anything to them. You better remind your team. Does that mean I can do the same thing? Bifla was angered by Qin Zhao's words. I'm telling you to remind your team to be careful, not for you to do the same thing. Forget it. Qin Zhao was just saying it casually. He didn't bring his team here to get a good ranking. Instead, he wanted to find out his team's current level. If it was only compared to the North American spiritual world, the supernatural organization was undoubtedly at the top. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were the ruling class. In the North American spiritual world, the supernatural organization wasn't very famous. But their hidden power and power were very great. However, the North American spiritual world was the weakest in the world. Their influence was like the national football team in the entire soccer world. The supernatural organization wasn't on the same level as the entire North American spiritual world. Therefore, the supernatural organization couldn't clearly determine their level. Only by going to a bigger stage and interacting with the spiritual worlds of more regions could they truly understand their own level. Only in this way could he truly raise his level. The supernatural organization was far from the top of the spiritual world in the entire world. Perhaps the 21st place in the first round of the Battle of Holy Glory wasn't the supernatural organization's true ranking. But the ranking was also very telling. My people found another criminal organization. Do you want to join? Bifla asked. We didn't win last time, so let's see who's better this time. What do you think? Sure. After the first time, there wouldn't be any sense of guilt for the second time. Why don't we go in another direction and not use magic? We are competing as assassins. If we only use magic, it will be over in an instant. There is no way to determine a winner in such a competition, Bifla said. Assassin? I've never been an assassin. First of all, we can't let those criminals discover us. All the prey must be killed in close combat. We can't kill more than 3 criminals at once. If there are 4 criminals gathered together, we can't make a move. To Qinzhao and Bifla, this wasn't a massacre. It was a game. To be honest, Qinzhao also felt that if they did what they did the first time, hundreds of criminal organizations wouldn't be enough for them to kill at all. Unless they were given an army, this kind of competition would be meaningless. However, Bifla's suggestion and rules added some fun to the game. This was a local criminal group, and this criminal group had its own building. The building was called the South Branch Building, but the locals called it the Sin Building. Qinzhao and Bifla arrived at the bottom of Sin Tower. The two of them checked the time. Let's begin when you're ready. Then let's begin. However, Bifla didn't start with a massacre. Instead, he sealed off the building's entrance. Then he made a signal jamming device to prevent the criminals from calling for help. The massacre officially began. Even with the various rules and restrictions Bifla had listed, this massacre didn't cause too much trouble for the two of them. It wasn't as convenient and fast as killing them all with a spell. However, a massacre that was similar to a normal person's wasn't something the criminals could stop. Bifla, how many have you killed? You already know the answer. Through the communicator, Bifla's reply was rather cold. Bifla replied like this because he could feel that Qinzhao was using the small world to monitor him. Of course, Bifla wasn't too honest either. He was also using a spell to monitor Qinzhao. Huh! 2 more spiritualists. Are they here for the same reason as us? Qinzhao suddenly realized that 2 spiritualists had come to the building. Moreover, the 2 spiritualists seemed to be moving toward Qinzhao and Bifla. They're here for us? Qinzhao asked. I think so. Do you know them? Bifla asked. He also didn't know where the 2 spiritualists came from. Moreover, they seemed to know where Qinzhao and Bifla were. Qinzhao and Bifla met up. The 2 spiritualists also changed their route and headed toward where Qinzhao and Bifla were gathered. The 2 spiritualists didn't hide their tracks. They directly appeared before Qinzhao and Bifla. One was a tall, skinny man in a black robe. The other had a smile on his face and stood slightly behind the tall, skinny man. The 2 looked at Qinzhao and Bifla, who were covered in blood. Qinzhao and Bifla also stared at the 2. Are you here to take revenge for these people? Bifla's drooping arms were dripping with blood. Of course, the blood wasn't his. It was inevitable that there would be blood in a close fight. No, the tall, skinny man said calmly. Are you professional killers? Or just bloodthirsty? Qinzhao and Bifla exchanged glances. They didn't understand the tall, skinny man's intentions. What did he mean? Didn't they realize that Bifla and Qinzhao were spiritualists? Just tell me why you're here. Do you want more killing? I can give you more kills and prey. Of course, if you need money, that's not a problem either. Qinzhao and Bifla exchanged glances again. It was because of their game that the 2 people in front of them had misunderstood. Did they think they were ordinary killers? Then, they wanted to pull them into their group and become their thugs? The 2 exchanged glances. This seemed to be an interesting new game. Both could see the interest in each other's eyes. Now was the time to test their acting skills. What makes you think you can give us more killing? To me, you're just 2 transvestite perverts. Ha! Maybe you should reintroduce yourself to me, Dark Warlock Ruik Des. Instantly, a terrifying black aura exploded from Ruik Des's body. In a few seconds, the black aura filled the entire crime building. All the criminals were instantly killed by the black aura. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2193. Death Aura? Chen Zhao's eyes widened. What a massive death aura! For example, Helis had obtained a ball of death aura and it was still one of her main attacks. The guy before him, Ruik Des, had more than 100 times more death aura than Helis. Do you feel the shock from my power? Ruik Des shouted condescendingly. This is a real massacre. Your massacre is too inefficient and too low-end. Who are you? Chen Zhao pretended to be shocked. Your expression is too exaggerated. Bifla's voice rang in Chen Zhao's ears. But he didn't let Ruik Des hear him. Me? I have many names. Grim Reaper, Demon, Undead Gonling. Undead Gonling? You're Undead Gonling? Bifla suddenly looked up at Ruik Des. He'd clearly heard of this name, or rather, a title. Chen Zhao was very confused. When Ruik Des saw that Bifla had heard of this name, he became even more proud. Yes, I'm Undead Gonling. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at the two. What was so special about this name? Undead Gonling appeared in the 50s of the last century. He first appeared in Western Europe. Some people were digging graves and stealing corpses. What really made this name famous was a gravekeeper. The gravekeeper discovered a figure digging a grave. Just as he was about to stop it, he discovered that the figure's face was rotting. This was a huge commotion at the time. Did you do it? I remember this. It was just a small prank, but I didn't expect that this small prank would make me famous. You look younger than I imagined. According to age, you should be in your 80s or 90s now. I have eternal life. If you're willing to work for me, I don't mind giving you the same eternity. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances again. This guy was too arrogant. Eternity? The two of them were already at the top of the spiritual world, right? There was also Mary, Zhang Tianyi, and John Sr. Even the 5 of them combined couldn't achieve eternity. This guy actually dared to say that he would grant them eternity? It seems like you still have some doubts about me. It's okay, I can give you some benefits first. As he spoke, Ruik Des pointed at Bifla and a green light shot towards Bifla. Bifla stood in place and allowed the green light to shine on his body. Then, Bifla's breathing became heavy. What do you think? Can you feel it? I have just bestowed upon you an even greater power than before. If there are no accidents, you should be more than twice as strong as before. Chen Zhao looked at Bifla curiously. Bifla took a deep breath and punched the wall. His fist was embedded into the wall, and it looked like it was full of strength. Ruik Des was obviously very satisfied with his results. He was also satisfied with Bifla's astonished expression. What do you think? Are you satisfied with your strength? Give it to me. I want it too. I want to be as strong as him. Chen Zhao shouted impatiently. Restrain yourself. You have to have some hesitation in your anticipation and some uneasiness in your excitement. Bifla's voice rang out again. Then are you willing to submit to me? Of course. We'll do whatever you want us to. Chen Zhao stared at Ruik Des, his eyes shining. Then kneel down and show your allegiance to me. No. Chen Zhao suddenly rejected him. What era are we in? You still like to be worshipped by others. Don't tell me you want to be a god or something? That's too low. Don't tell me you really have such a lowly idea? Fine, forget it if you don't want to kneel. Ruik Des waved his hand. He was very uncomfortable from Chen Zhao's stare. Do you really want to disguise yourself as a god? If so, we don't really mind, but don't do something like kneeling so easily. If Chen Zhao could see Ruik Des's expression now, he would definitely see that his face was red. Oh, who's the person beside you? Then, Chen Zhao looked at the smiling man beside Ruik Des. From the moment they appeared until now, the man had been grinning. He had no other expression. He's my servant and slave. He completely submits to me and is under my control. You're not thinking of turning us into him, are you? Chen Zhao said in disdain. It's really creepy. Even if you want to become like him, it's impossible. You're more useful than him. Really? What abilities does he have? In what way are we better than him? You can do many things for me, but the slave can't leave my side. Can't leave your side? Actually, he's your bodyguard, right? Okay, let's not talk about these trivial things. Let's leave this place first. Stay where you are and don't resist my power. Ruik Des's black aura enveloped Qin Zhao and Bifla. Then the two felt a force lifting them up. Suddenly, Qin Zhao and Bifla felt something lifting them up. However, this force was too insignificant for them. It wasn't enough to lift them up at all. In the end, they still had to use their own power to fly. If Ruik Des found that he couldn't drag the two of them, he might give himself away. Fortunately, Ruik Descartes thought that Qin Zhao and Bifla were just two regular professional assassins. So, the two hadn't been exposed yet. Should we compete to see who's exposed first, and who's discovered by this guy first? Qin Zhao glanced at Bifla, who was also flying beside him. He nodded and didn't say anything. He didn't know what kind of spell Bifla had used to send messages. Anyway, he had nothing else to do now. For now, he'd play with Ruik Des. From the previous contact, Qin Zhao could tell that Ruik Des was an arrogant spiritualist. He also liked to show off his magic. He seemed to like to find a sense of superiority from ordinary people. Of course, it couldn't be denied that he did have some abilities. Although he wasn't at the top, he was at least at a high level. Qin Zhao estimated Ruik Des' abilities. They should be about the same as Halley's, or maybe even stronger. But his strength should be limited. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2194. If power, identity, status, reputation, and other factors were combined into a ranking, for example, Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Blood Mary, and John Sr. were all top figures in the spiritual world. Their power, identity, and status were all at the top. There was no room for improvement. At least, the possibility of improvement was very small. Qin Zhao and Bifla were close to the top. For example, Bifla's power was slightly lacking, but his identity and status were also not to be underestimated. Qin Zhao's identity, status, and reputation were slightly lacking. Nevertheless, they were already top in a certain aspect. At least one of them could be mentioned in the same breath as the top few. Below them were the publicly recognized experts. Some people classified them as top experts. They had a certain identity, status, reputation, and outstanding power. Of course, power was the most important. As long as one had power, it was not difficult to become famous in the spiritual world. Ruik Des's strength wasn't top-notch, but he was close. He did not notice Qin Zhao and Bifla at all. On one hand, he was prejudiced. On the other hand, he was overconfident. On the other hand, Qin Zhao and Bifla liked this game. It was because of their cooperation that Ruik Des really thought that he controlled everything. The two were brought to a deserted cemetery. Qin Zhao and Bifla were both spiritualists. But they did not like this place. No one would like a place like this. Qin Zhao had once asked Helith if she liked dark and damp places. In the end, Helith only rolled her eyes in reply. A gloomy environment would give people a feeling of insecurity. This was the fear of nature that humans had retained during their evolution. On the other hand, a damp environment would purely affect people's physiological reactions. Ruik Des opened an underground entrance. Go in. Ruik Des pointed at the entrance. There won't be any man-eating monsters inside. You brought us here to be food for some monster, right? Do you have persecutory delusions? Ruik Des said angrily. In the end, Qin Zhao and Bifla were also driven in. The underground base did not look old. It seemed to have been built recently. Soon, they got their answer. After walking along the corridor for a while, they saw a few rotting corpses working there. To be precise, these corpses were completing the renovation workers' work. The construction of this underground base was not yet complete. Judging from the decoration style, Ruick Saunders' preferences were more modern. At least it was completely different from the gloomy graveyard outside. At first, Qin Zhao and Bifla had thought that the base under the eerie graveyard would only be scarier. However, the environment here made them both heave a sigh of relief. If it was really a dirty base, the two of them might not be able to last long. At this moment, a group of people walked over from the front. Everyone was wearing tight-fitting clothes of the same style. It was the same for both men and women. As for skin color, there were yellow, white, and black people. Mr. Sanders. Everyone was in awe of Ruick Dales. At the same time, he looked at Qin Zhao and Bifla, who were behind Ruick Des. Are they new here? Yes, they're new here. You guys have to get along well. Also, get someone to show them around. You two, please follow me. A tall woman stood up. She seemed to be the big sister of the group. She had the temperament of a leader. Her outstanding looks and strength, coupled with her personal aura, made it hard for others to object when she spoke. Qin Zhao and Bifla followed the woman obediently. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mado Xinji. I'm Qin Zhao from China. Bifla from Central Asia. What do you do? Mado Xinji asked. Assassins. Assassins. Is that so? Seems like Mr. Sanders is no longer satisfied with ordinary people. Mado Xinji's voice was not loud, but it still reached Qin Zhao and Bifla's ears. Both of them sensed something unusual in Mado Xinji's tone. Was it a sense of urgency? She seemed to be afraid of being eliminated. The cafeteria is up ahead. Mado Xinji pointed to the front and said, The meal times here are fixed. Breakfast is from 6 to 8, lunch is from 12 to 1, and dinner is from 6 to 7. After the meal time, you won't be able to eat anything and can only go hungry. I feel like this place is militarized. Oh, do we have to wear these ugly uniforms like you? That's right. Mado Xinji nodded. You don't have to like it, but Mr. Sanders won't change his mind because of you. What did you do before? Qin Zhao asked curiously. I was a clerk, but that was a year ago, until I met Mr. Sanders, Mado Xinji said. I'm curious. A clerk following a dark warlock. Did he drug you with some kind of drug? Or some magic? No, I just paid him back. He helped me do something that I couldn't do. In exchange, I'll serve him for 10 years. I don't think there's anything wrong with our deal. Although Mado Xinji seemed to have her own opinions, her words seemed to be a little protective of Ruick Des. He's just using you. I know, but there's nothing wrong with that. We both take what we need. Qin Zhao shrugged. It seemed that provoking Mado Xinji didn't work. What do we need to do here? Accept experiments and modifications, like in the movies? Something like that. Will you mutate and go crazy in the end? That's right. If you fail, you will indeed mutate and go crazy. That's scary. I'm starting to regret it. Qin Zhao turned to Bifla. Even if you regret it, it's too late. From the moment you came here, there's no way out. After all, including me, no one will let you leave here alive and spread the secrets of this place. We're killers. Our lips are sealed. We only trust the dead. Mr. Sanders too. Okay, I'll be good, right, Bifla? Yes. Good. After all, I don't want to kill. You've never killed before? Chapter 2195. Does it mean that as long as I accept the modification and don't go crazy, it's considered a success? That's not the first time. Don't naively think that one successful modification is the end. That's just the beginning. Mado Xinji's tone carried a hint of warning, but also a hint of pride. Every modification is a test of life and death. Every modification will make you hover between rationality and madness. Every modification will make you understand the meaning of life anew. Looks exciting, Bifla said, rubbing his chin. How many times have you modified? Chun looked at Mado Shinji curiously. 5 times. All succeeded. I didn't turn into a monster or lose my rationality. Then when will our modification begin? Tomorrow, you'll receive your first modification. Alright, looks like I should look forward to tomorrow. That's the furnace in front, the place for the modification experiment. Mado Shinji pointed at a metal door in front. Can we go in? Yes. Mado Shinji led the way. After opening the door, Chin and Bifla felt a wave of heat as they left. They actually used underground magma to form a magma pool about 20 meters in diameter in this room. In the center of the pool was a container soaked in magma. The container was transparent glass, with a small part exposed outside the magma pool. There was a person soaking in the container. A few people were waiting at the edge of the magma pool. Is that a modification experiment? Chin asked. Yes. I thought it was cooking. Mado Shinji glanced at Chin. Are you really an assassin? Is there a problem? I've never seen an assassin who likes to bicker so much. Have you seen many assassins? No, it's my first time seeing a legendary assassin. I think he looks more like one. It's always like that in movies. Talking less doesn't mean you're an assassin. Talking more doesn't mean you're not an assassin. Just then, the person soaking in the container suddenly opened his eyes and began to struggle violently. He tried to smash open the container, but the glass container seemed to be unimaginably tough. The liquid in the container also absorbed his beating. Outside, Chen and the others couldn't even hear the sound of the people inside the container hammering. He seems to be in pain. Are you not letting him out? This process is normal. Humans are unable to withstand the power extracted from the magma, so special potions are needed to suppress it. Even so, it will still cause a huge impact on the human body and mentality. If one can persist, then it will be considered a success. What if I don't make it? Falling into madness will also turn you into a monster. You're talking about injecting the energy extracted from the magma into a person's body. Let's not talk about whether it's possible. Even if it's possible, can it turn a person into a monster? What turns people into monsters isn't the power extracted from the magma, but the special potions used to suppress it. Madwa paused, then added, if this special potion is not used, the person will definitely die, but if it is used, there is a possibility of success. What are the chances of success? Not necessarily. Everyone's physique is different. Their endurance and willpower are also different, so the probability is different. Give me an average. Between 40% to 60%. At that moment, the container opened. The person soaked in it immediately rushed out of the container, knelt on the ground and vomited. The surrounding staff hurried forward, wanting to help the person up. But Madwa, who was standing at the edge, immediately shouted, "Everyone, step back." When the surrounding staff heard Madwa's words, most of them were stunned for a moment, but they still obeyed Madwa's order and retreated to the side. Madwa clearly noticed the abnormality of the person undergoing the transformation experiment. He was roaring like a wild beast. Suddenly he raised his head. Chan and Bifla noticed that his face had become slightly distorted. The person glared fiercely at Madwa, Chan and Bifla in front of him. Chan and Bifla seemed to have discussed it before, and both took a step back. He looks a little scary, Miss Madwa. I'll leave him to you. Madwa Shinji did not have any objections and took a step forward. Ninku, calm down, you still have a chance. Don't give up on yourself. What responded to Madwa Shinji was a hysterical roar from Ninku. Fur began to grow on Ninku's body. At the same time, he pounced towards Madwa. Madwa immediately went up to meet him. First, she avoided Ninku's attack, and at the same time, she hit him hard in the abdomen. Ninku rolled a few times on the ground and stood up unscathed. Chun and Bifla stood outside the battle circle to watch the show. And they were making sarcastic remarks while commenting. Her fighting skills are so amateur. Apart from her outstanding physical strength, her performance looks very bad. Their voices were neither loud nor soft, but it was enough for Madwa to hear. Madwa was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. If Ningku hadn't given her great pressure, she would probably have turned around and punched them a few times. But Chen and Bifla obviously did not suppress their cold-blooded nature. He was still talking incessantly. The more Madwa listened, the angrier she became. Ningku, who had fallen into madness, was already hopeless. And Madwa could not get rid of Ningku in a short time. Of course, there was another very important reason. Madwa Shinji showed some mercy. After all, they were once companions. And the degree of Ningku's mutation was not very big. Madwa still had some hope that Ningku could regain his sanity. However, the two sides fought for a while, but still, no one could do anything to the other. After fighting for 10 minutes, Madwa repelled Ningku with one blow. She also took a few steps back to regroup. Madwa looked at Chin and Bifla. Since you think I didn't perform well, then let me see what you can do. Madwa suddenly took 2 steps back. At the same time, she reached out and pushed Chin and Bifla's back. The two stumbled in front of Ningku. At this time, Ningku also attacked the two. Bifla suddenly reached out and slashed forward. Ningku's neck was instantly cut open, and blood splattered all over Bifla. Under Madwa's stunned gaze, Ningku's lifeless body slowly fell to the ground. Madwa looked at Bifla in a daze. How did you do it? Chapter 2196. See, this is the difference between a killer and a regular person. Grinning, Qin Zhao put his hand on Mado Shinji's shoulder. Mado Shinji's expression darkened. She flung Qin Zhao's arm away. But Bifla had easily killed Nink, who'd gone mad. It still made Madwa Shinji feel a little uncomfortable. She wasn't sad about Nink's death. To Nink, death was a form of release. She just felt that even after 5 modifications, she still couldn't compare to a newbie. Was there really such a huge difference between a professional killer and a regular person like her? Madwa Xing knew her own strength and ability. After the modifications, she already had abilities far beyond a regular person. But Bifla had crushed her in a strange way. Madwa Shinji turned and left. Qin Zhao and Bifla still followed her. Madwa Shinji felt a sense of danger. This was her only home. Even if Ruik Des was using her, she didn't feel anything. At least here, someone needed her. She could also show her value. But the appearance of these two killers made her feel like she was about to be eliminated. She felt like she was about to be eliminated. Without a doubt, there was a fundamental difference between a regular person and a killer. For example, if it was the Mado Shinji from a year ago, she definitely wouldn't be able to fight against the crazy Nink. But Bifla had ended the battle in the blink of an eye. If the two could be like her and go through 3, 4 times, no, maybe they only needed 1 successful modification experiment. They would surpass her in all aspects. Would she still have any value then? Are all assassins like you? No, we're the best killers, Bifla said proudly. Then what's the difference between us and regular killers? Mado Shinji asked. Just like the difference between you and regular people, Bifla said. Of course, Mado Shinji knew how big the difference was between her and regular people. Mado Shinji brought Qin Zhao and Bifla around the underground palace a few times. Finally, she brought them to their residence. This was a residential area, even though it was underground. Although it was underground, there were some modern facilities that wouldn't make people uncomfortable. Qin Zhao and Bifla were placed in the same room. Qin Zhao drew a line in the room. Don't cross this line, especially when I'm asleep, or I'll kill you. 10 centimeters more on your side, Bifla said coldly. At the same time, he redivided the room. I think you're the one who's been drinking too much. Qin Zhao added another line. It's about time. It's not almost the same. You have more, and I have less. Qin Zhao didn't like staying in the same room with men. Bifla didn't like it either. Both of them were the type of people who were particularly strong. They would not give in to the other party. You want to fight? Do you think I'll be afraid of you? At this moment, the door was pushed open. Mado Shinji looked at the messy room. What are you doing? I want to change rooms, Bifla said straightforwardly. I also want to change rooms. I'll leave this room to him. We didn't change rooms. You'd better behave yourselves. Don't cause trouble here. Ma Duo Xing said coldly, then turned around and left the room. Qinzhao glanced at Bifla and also left the room. He pushed open the opposite door. When the two people inside saw Qinzhao come in, they were both stunned. Hi, I'm new here. My room is opposite. Can I change rooms with you? Get out, kid. Hearing that Qinzhao was new, the two acted like seniors, not giving him any face at all. 3 minutes later, the two dragged their luggage out with swollen noses and noses. As soon as they reached the door, the other two also dragged their luggage out. What happened? Don't mention it. Shoal came and wants to change rooms with us. Us too. Bang, bang. Are you asleep? Idiot, don't knock on the wall so hard. I don't want to change rooms. What's Ruik Des's goal? I don't know. Is it related to the Battle of Holy Glory? This underground base clearly took some time to build. It wasn't specially prepared for the Battle of Holy Glory. Also, his other nickname is Immortal Gongling. He's famous in Eastern Europe, but he doesn't have any criminal records, so no one wants him. Fine. Shen Zhao shrugged. What do you plan to do with this guy? If he's not that annoying, he'll leave after the game ends. If he makes me annoyed, I'll kill him after the game ends. What's your standard of annoyance? You're the standard, Bifla said. Qin Zhao wanted to punch through the wall and pull Bifla over. But after thinking carefully, he gave up on the idea. After all, changing rooms was too troublesome. He'd already done it once. If he did it again, it might arouse Ruik Des's suspicions. Oh, when's the next Battle of Holy Glory? 3 days later. That means we only have 3 days. Maybe not 3 days. Why? Maybe you'll be exposed tomorrow. Even if you're exposed, I won't. As long as I don't use my real power, Ruik Des won't notice. Qin Zhao and Bifla chatted for the whole night. Both of them were the kind of people who were extremely poor and bored. Plus, they were full of energy. They couldn't stay idle for a few days. The next day, Qin Zhao and Bifla were woken up. After breakfast, the two of them were called to Ruik Des. Mato Shinji was in the room too. I heard you guys killed the crazy Ning with one move yesterday? Not us, Bifla said matter-of-factly. Ruik Des looked at Qin Zhao. What about you? How strong are you compared to him? Not weaker than him, Qin Zhao said, glancing at Bifla provocatively. Both of you are excellent candidates. Ruik Des had wanted to say excellent test subjects, but he didn't say anything. However, considering the two's state of mind, he changed his words. With your abilities, the first modification experiment should be fine. Then let's begin. I can't wait to become stronger. Very good, but before that you better stay calm. The calmer, the better. Our training has made us good at controlling our emotions. That's great. Let's begin. Who's first? Him. Him. Qin Zhao and Bifla said at the same time. Chapter 2197. Loic Des wasn't asking for their opinion. He pointed at Qin Zhao and said, You first. Qin Zhao was helpless. He could only drag his clothes and walk toward the container. He stepped into the container, and the liquid immediately wrapped around him. From a medical analysis, the potion had strong skin irritation. Qin Zhao felt it, and analyzed the components of the potion at the same time. If it was a simple mutation potion, Qin Zhao knew how to make it. It wasn't any special or complicated potion. However, the components of the potion in this container were more complicated. For a layman, it was almost impossible to analyze the components. Mato Shinji stood at the side and looked at Qin Zhao, who was soaking in the container, with a complicated expression. Loic Des crossed his arms in front of his chest. His expression couldn't be seen. Bifla found a seat at the side and sat down. Mato Shinji glanced at Bifla. Bifla was even more relaxed than Loic Des. It was as if he was a complete stranger soaking in the container. "Aren't you worried at all?" "Worried about what?" Bifla said, unconcerned. "Even though the first experiment isn't very risky, it's still dangerous. Aren't you worried that something will happen to him?" "If something happens to him, I'll be happy to see it. Isn't he your friend? When did you have this misunderstanding?" "We're not friends." Mado Shinji couldn't help but be confused. What was Chen Zhao's relationship with Bifla? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? At first, Mado Shinji looked at the time every 10 minutes. Later on, she looked at the time every minute. The longer Chen Zhao soaked in the container, the more impatient she became. 30 minutes. This was the record she'd once set. The potion in the container had a terrifying corrosive effect. Both the body and the mind were corroded. The longer one persisted, the more medicinal potency one absorbed, the stronger the individual's strength would be, and the stronger the corrosion would be. Usually, 10 minutes was a normal person's limit. After this time, unpredictable changes might happen. After 20 minutes, there would be an extremely strong adverse reaction. If one didn't come out within 30 minutes, their body might mutate, and their mind might become twisted. But Qin Zhao had already soaked in the container for 40 minutes, and there was no reaction at all. Just like the last time when Ningku was soaked in the container for more than 20 minutes, he had an extremely strong reaction and even lost control. Right now, Chen Zhao seemed to be asleep. "Chen Zhao, that's enough." Bifla's voice rang in his ears. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the people outside the container. Then, Qin Zhao gestured at the container, gesturing for everyone to open the lid. After the container was opened, Qin Zhao jumped out. Loic Des and Mado Singe looked at the wet display. Neither of them avoided the completely naked Qin Zhao. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't really care. "How do you feel?" Ruic Des looked like he was admiring his own work. In fact, he did treat Qin Zhao as his own work. Qin Zhao looked at his body and then shook his head. "I don't know. I don't feel anything special." Ruic Des rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Was the physique of a professional assassin really that much stronger than that of an ordinary person? After staying in the container for 40 minutes, Qin Zhao had almost absorbed all the potion's power. But his body didn't have any negative reactions. Ruic thought for a while, then raised his palm, and a black light burst forth from his palm. The black light dissipated before it could reach Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao reacted quickly. He did a backflip and rolled several meters away. He'd almost been exposed. Qin Zhao clutched his chest, his expression somewhat pained. "What are you doing?" Qin Zhao pretended to be angry at Ruic Des. "You're not bad. I'm looking forward to the second one now." Ruic Des turned to Bifla. "Don't lose to your partner." "I won't lose to him." Bifla glanced at Qin Zhao, his eyes filled with provocation. Just like Qin Zhao, Bifla stayed in the container. He didn't come out until all the potion's power was absorbed. Mado Singe realized that Qin Zhao was dozing off on the ground, just like Bifla. He didn't care if Bifla was in danger in the container. Just like Qin Zhao, Bifla walked out of the container unscathed. "I stayed 1 minute longer than him." The first thing Bifla said was that he'd defeated Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. "After most of the potion's power is absorbed, it's basically like diving. You might as well dive for 10 more minutes. That's still a win." "Fine, you win, okay?" Qin Zhao didn't argue. There was nothing to argue with anyway. "Looks like you're both stable. Practice your transformations in the next 2 days. The day after tomorrow, I'll arrange your first mission for you." "How?" "You two are about the same level. You can spar with each other. Remember, don't be too heavy-handed. After all, you're rare candidates." With that, Ruic Des turned and left. Only Qin Zhao, Bifla, and Mado Singe were left. Bifla looked at Qin Zhao. "How about it? Do you want to compete with our current power?" What Bifla was implying was that Qin Zhao shouldn't use his own strength and suppress it to the level he just displayed. "I'll fight you to the end." Actually, there was no way to distinguish one's status in this battle. Even though they'd suppressed their strength, their levels were still there. Physique, willpower, and resistance couldn't be suppressed. Nevertheless, Mado Singe was still curious about how much Qin Zhao and Bifla had improved after the modification experiment. Before the modification, Chen Zhao and Bifla were already terrifyingly strong. After the first modification, their strength would probably increase by leaps and bounds too. Mado Singe brought Chen Zhao and Bifla to a wide indoor training field. Before Mado Singe could give the order, Chen Zhao and Bifla attacked each other at the same time. Their faces were hit at the same time, and they took 2 steps back. "Does it hurt?" Bifla touched his cheek. "What do you think?" Chen Zhao and Bifla both had extremely rich combat experience. In particular, Chen Zhao's close-range combat was extremely proficient. In comparison, Bifla's close-range combat was slightly lacking. But with hundreds of years of experience, he could continuously improve himself in battle. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2198. Mado Shinji's eyes almost popped out. Qin Zhao and Bifla had only undergone the first modification experiment. However, the combat power they had displayed already made Mado Shinji feel very guilty. Mado Shinji clenched her fists and stared at the 2 people in the middle. Let's not talk about the physiques they displayed. At the very least, they were much more powerful than Mado Shinji. However, after 10 minutes, the 2 stopped at the same time. There was no point in continuing. It was like 2 boxing champions were scratching each other's itches. Would they be able to determine the victor with such a method? Mado Shinji frowned. She felt that the 2's tacit agreement from the start to the end made her feel strange. But she couldn't tell what was going on with this strange feeling. "Don't you 2 need to familiarize yourself with your powers?" Mado Shinji asked. "We're already familiar with each other. We don't need to." Both of them were so conceited and proud. "How about I spar with you too?" Mado Shinji made up her mind to test how powerful the 2 were. "Not interested." Bifla rejected Mado Shinji's challenge with a cold expression. Then, Mado looked at Qin Zhao. "How about you tell us your story? If it's interesting enough, I'll spar with you." "My past? It's not a secret. Many people here know about it. If you're nosy enough, you can get a more detailed story from others. It's more interesting to hear it from the person involved. At least, I hope it's interesting." "Nothing much. I fell in love with a love scammer, and after that scammer married me, he bought a lot of accident insurance for me. The rest of the story wasn't too surprising. You should be able to guess that he planned an accident for me. When I was about to die, I met Mr. Sanders." Mado Shinji's eyes sparkled with admiration at the mention of Reich Dos. "Mr. Des saved me and made a deal with me. He threatened you and made you obey him?" Hearing Qin Zhao's words, Mado Shinji's face turned red in anger. "Mr. Des isn't as despicable as you say. He's more noble than anyone else." Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. To him, she was just a brainless fan who had been fooled by the facade. "You call experimenting on living people noble? Have you misunderstood the definition of nobility? He's never forced you," Mado Shinji argued. "Maybe that swindler was arranged by him." "Nonsense." Mado Shinji was furious. She raised her fist and swung it at Qin Zhao. Chuckling, Qin Zhao took a step back and dodged Mado Shinji's punch. "Destroying the faith of others is a very immoral thing to do," Bifla said calmly. Mado Shinji turned to look at Bifla fiercely. "You have the same idea as him?" "No, he's just teasing you." "I know." Mado Shinji was still angry. "Mr. Des is not as despicable as he said. Just based on Ruik Des's ability and the time cost, if he really needs you to work for him, he doesn't need to go through so much trouble." "Humph." Mado Shinji snorted and turned to leave. Bifla was giving an explanation. However, this explanation did not satisfy her. To Mado Shinji, Ruik Des was a god in her heart. When she needed help the most, God did not help her. It was Ruik Des who had helped her. Therefore, she would not allow anyone to insult Ruik Des. She would not allow anyone to tarnish her faith. At that moment, Mato Shinji saw Ruik Des in the laboratory. He was making some complicated magic potions. Mato Shinji pushed open the lab door. Ruik Des did not raise his head. Instead, he continued with his work. Mato, I can feel that your mind is very active. What happened? Mr. Des, those two guys are much stronger than normal people, but they are not loyal to you. They have no respect for you at all. I don't need respect, Ruik Des said calmly. I don't need anyone's loyalty. I said that this is a deal, just like the deal with you. Even if you say that, you can't change my decision. Mr. Des, I will always be loyal to you. I don't need it. I said that this is a deal. Mr. Des, do you want them to carry out the mission tomorrow? Yes. Is there a problem? Please allow me to follow them. After all, they might betray me. You can't watch them. If they want to betray you, you won't be able to stop them. You might even lose your life. I'm not afraid. As long as I can do something for Mr. Des, I'm willing to do anything. Okay, you don't have to worry about them. Do your own thing. Mr. Des, I still want to watch them. Ruik Des finally stopped his work and looked up at Mato Shinji. After thinking for a while, Ruik Des finally said, All right, keep this bottle of potion on you. It can increase your strength tenfold, and it has already lasted for more than an hour. If you use this bottle of potion, it's best to return here within an hour. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Mr. Des, I'll keep a close eye on them. Mato Shinji hesitated for a while before saying, Mr. Des, those two are slandering you. The Asian called Chen Zhao said that you were the one who arranged the scammer. I don't need to do that. You're not worth my effort, Ruik Des replied. Ruik Des replied, though his reply was even harsher than Baifla's earlier words. However, Mato Shinji felt satisfied. Mr. Des, what mission do you want them to carry out tomorrow? Stealing corpses, Ruik Des replied. You can give this mission to me or someone more loyal. Why do you want them to do it? Because the corpses they want to steal don't belong to ordinary people. The corpses are all guarded by spiritualists like me. You're not bad, but you can't carry out this mission yet. Comparatively, as killers, they're more suitable for this mission. They know how to hide and escape. Okay, you can leave now. Don't disturb my experiment. Ruik Des once again focused on his work. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2199. The next day, Chen Zhao and Baifla were both called to Rikdos. Of course, Mato Shinji was there too. The reason I called the three of you here today is to ask you to do something for me. Rikdos glanced at Mato Shinji, even though she was actually monitoring Chen Zhao and Baifla. Of course, he couldn't say that in front of them. Nominally, she was carrying out the mission with them. I need some corpses. You three need to help me get some corpses. They shouldn't be corpses lying in the morgue, right? Baifla asked. That's right. When these corpses were alive, they were special people just like me. Baifla didn't deny it. Their corpses won't be left in the morgue either. There will be special people guarding them. So you're sending us to our deaths? We've been strengthened, but that doesn't mean we can fight against people like you, Chen Zhao said, pretending to be angry. First of all, the ones who will guard the corpses won't be strong, and it's impossible for them to be at my level. Therefore, you guys don't have to worry. The average spiritualists might not be stronger than you guys. Actually, you guys are considered superhumans now. If you guys were in the supernatural world, you guys would be considered enhancers. Coupled with your rich combat experience, those spiritualists might not be able to do anything to you. That means we can kill people. Please don't. Rikdos was shocked. Large numbers of spiritualists have come to Istanbul. The most outstanding spiritualists in the world are all here. Even the top spiritualists are here. If you kill any spiritualist now, there might be a storm of revenge. Rikdos was ambitious, but that didn't mean he was stupid. He was also arrogant enough to think that he could defeat all the heroes. Not to mention the top existences, any one of them could press him to the ground and rub him. Even among the people qualified to participate in the Battle of Holy Glory, there were a few who could defeat him. The consequences of killing indiscriminately in Istanbul were very serious. Ordinary people didn't need to be mentioned. If a spiritualist killed an ordinary person, or even if there was direct evidence that it was done by a spiritualist, there would be extremely serious consequences. As for spiritualists, even the most ordinary spiritualists might have a god standing behind them. He couldn't afford to offend anyone. Ruik Des suppressed his strong uneasiness. He had seen the bloodthirsty side of Chen Zhao and Baifla. At that time, he also catered to their interests, and tricked them into coming here. However, the two of them performed well in the modification experiment. It was still worth it for Ruik Saunders. But when Chen Zhao said those words, Ruik felt his eyelids twitch. There will be a chance in the future, but not this time. What I want you to do is to bring the bodies here, not to kill. Do you understand? Ruik Des regained his coldness. You can't kill people? Boring, Chen Zhao complained. Ruik Des narrowed his eyes. Are you going to refuse my order? Okay, calm down. Chen Zhao chuckled and waved his hand. I'll listen to your orders. That's for the best. Let's move quickly. Then Chen Zhao, Baifla, and Mado Shinji were sent out of the underground base. Very soon, Mado Shinji realized that Chen Zhao and Baifla weren't going to the mission location. The two of them found a restaurant on the side of the road and ordered a lot of food. Aren't we going to the mission now? What's the rush? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Look at the time. It's daytime. Are you going to charge into someone's house and steal the bodies? It's not a hospital, it's someone's house. Fine. Mado Shinji was very unhappy with Chen Zhao and Baifla's negative attitude. But thinking about it, it did seem to make sense. Going to someone's house to steal a body in the daytime. It really wasn't a good idea. After thinking for a while, Mado Shinji said, Then follow me somewhere. Where? Don't worry about it. Just follow me. Ms. Mado, please be clear. We're not your subordinates. Mado Shinji stared coldly at Chen Zhao and Baifla. Are you sure you want to reject my request? Ms. Mado, you might not be able to defeat us. Although you've gone through 4 modification experiments, your foundation is much weaker than ours. Plus, there are 2 of us and you're only 1. Do you think Mr. Sanders didn't give me any trump cards? Do you think he doesn't know your personalities? Fine, I'll listen to you, Ms. Mado. Chen Zhao's change in attitude was out of Mado Shinji's expectations. She stared at Chen Zhao, who was smiling playfully. She could clearly feel that Chen Zhao wasn't afraid of her. Baifla was the same. Perhaps they didn't care about her trump cards at all. Subconsciously, they looked down on her. Chen Zhao seemed to be compromising, but in reality, he just didn't want to fall out with her so soon. The 3 arrived outside a private house. Chen Zhao, Baifla, and Mado Shinji stood opposite the community road. They stared at the house from afar. What kind of people live in there? Are they your enemies? Do you need me to go in and kill everyone inside? Mado Shinji glared at Chen Zhao. Shut up. Just then, a car stopped in front of the house. A man and a few children of different ages alighted from the car. There were 4 children in total. One was 11 or 12 years old, one was 8 or 9, one was 4 or 5, and the last one was in the man's arms. It was less than 2 years old. Mado Shinji couldn't help but get excited. She stared closely at the child beside the man. At that moment, another woman got out of the car. She was pregnant. Mado Shinji held onto the tree trunk, her palms tearing through the bark. Is that man the liar you mentioned? Chen Zhao asked curiously. Didn't you say he died? No, he's my ex-husband. Oh. So those children are your children? It's not a wise choice to bring 2 killers to visit someone you care about, Baifla said indifferently. Mado Shinji was stunned. She really hadn't thought about this. She'd brought Qin Zhao and Baifla here because she had a mission to monitor them. She couldn't let Qin Zhao and Baifla out of her sight. But she also wanted to see her own children. That was why she'd brought them along. She didn't expect that Baifla's words would instantly make her realize something. Qin Zhao and Baifla were dangerous. Chapter 2200. Mado Shinji glanced at Qin Zhao and Baifla. A hidden murderous intent flashed across her eyes. However, Mado Shinji's disguise was too crude. Who were Qin Zhao and Baifla? Mado Shinji's trick seemed like a joke before the two of them. She glanced at her child and ex-husband from afar. Mado Shinji left with Qin Zhao and Baifla. It was getting late. The three went to the designated mission location. According to the information they'd received from Ruik Des, this should be a private villa. From the outside, it indeed looked like a private villa. But when the three looked down from a high slope thousands of meters away, they could see that it was a heavily guarded fortress. There were at least 4 guards visible to the naked eye. There were also people going in and out of the villa. Also, they couldn't see their target from this high slope. Those people had probably placed the corpses inside the building. Qin Zhao glanced at Baifla. At this distance, even Qin Zhao couldn't sense the situation inside the villa. But Baifla's senses could definitely tell. Baifla was expressionless, though. Qin Zhao couldn't see anything from his face. Inside the villa, an old man in a gray robe sat on the sofa. He held a metal walking stick with his hands and his eyes were slightly closed. Just then, a young spiritualist came in from outside. "Mr. Rodman, I sense that someone's spying on this place." The old man called Rodman didn't open his eyes. He only replied, "Got it. You can leave." The young spiritualist left the hall respectfully. "Hey, Hami." Another copper called the young spiritualist. "Come here." "What for?" Hami came to a corner. "That old man Rodman still hasn't reacted?" "You're new. Of course you don't know." "Know what? Could it be that the old man is blind?" "Mr. Rodman cultivates blind. People who cultivate this can't open their eyes." "What happens if they open their eyes?" "Everyone around will lose their vision," Hami said. "What kind of spell is this? Or is it some kind of ability?" "This is a special characteristic of the blind magic. Although Mr. Rodman did not open his eyes, his mind's eye has always been observing his surroundings. His senses are sharper than anyone else's, so even without his eyes, he knows what is going on. Although the effect is quite good, it's only effective against ordinary people. Even if spiritualists lose their vision, they still have other senses and perception abilities. Naive. Losing your sight is just your first reaction. Although Mr. Rodman's strength isn't the best, he is known as the undefeatable blind. Do you know why? Why? Because no one can defeat him. Isn't that an exaggeration? There are so many spiritualists in the world, and there are even a few top-notch existences. How is it possible that no one can defeat him? It's because he can only open his eyes once. Once, he'll be invincible. As long as one falls into darkness, he can banish everyone who falls into darkness to the world of darkness. No one can be exempted, not even the strongest spiritualists. Hami said, "This is the secret of his invincibility, the only chance in his life to be invincible." So powerful? Of course, so it's safest for Mr. Rodman to guard the corpses of these spiritualists. No one dares to offend him. There's no way to avoid falling into darkness? Not any known magic, be it Eastern or Western, Roland said. Since that old man is so powerful, why does he need us? How boring. Other than Rodman, the other guards here were the younger generation of various forces. This was because this was where the corpses of those who died in the Battle of Holy Glory were stored. And because the grudges between the various forces were complicated. Moreover, the corpses of spiritualists were also very valuable. If only someone from one force was guarding the corpses of the spiritualists, no one knew what kind of trouble would occur. In the past, a spiritualist guarding the corpses secretly refined the corpses. In the end, It led to a war between the forces. Therefore, in the Battle of Holy Glory, as long as the corpses of those who died in the battle were under unified management, the various forces would also send people to temporarily guard the corpses. Basically, if someone died in a force's team, that force would have to send someone to temporarily guard the corpses. Of course, Rodman was the person in charge here. Therefore, most of the time, this place was peaceful. Inside and outside, no one dared to peep here. After all, the risk of facing Rodman was far greater than obtaining the corpses of a few spiritualists. The benefits and risks were not proportional, so of course, the situation was peaceful. Of course, occasionally some reckless thieves would come here to take advantage of them. Most of the time, Rodman didn't need to do anything. The entry-level disciples or members of the various forces were enough to send those thieves away. You have super perception. Do you know who is watching over us this time? I don't know. Even Mr. Rodman, who is in charge here, doesn't know and actually dared to peep here. It's most likely a group of brainless idiots. Idiots are good too. Those big shots are participating in the Battle of Holy Glory, and we small people are guarding the corpses here. Finally, we have a chance to exercise our muscles. We can't beat those great experts, so we can use this group of idiots to practice our skills. The guards in the villa soon knew that a group of people had their eyes on this place. Most of the guards were already extremely bored. They heard that they could fight with others, and that they could do it openly. They were all very excited. The villa looked peaceful under the night sky, but the guards inside were all overflowing with fighting spirit. Ms. Mato, what's your plan? One of you is in charge of attracting the guards' attention, Mato Shinji said. One of you go in and find and steal the corpses. I'll be here to support you. You really know how to choose missions, Chen Zhao said mockingly. Isn't the mission too difficult for you? It's getting late. Hurry, Bifla urged. Okay, Ms. Mato. There's still some distance from here to the villa, but don't let your guard down. This isn't a safe zone. Those guys have all kinds of strange abilities. Who knows what special ones they might have? You don't have to be so nosy. Just mind your own mission. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.